In a grand sunlit hall, a nobleman in a mask kneels before a pink-haired woman. Before several witnesses, the masked nobleman holds the hand of the woman in tattered clothing. He reflects on his long wait while her family mockingly plans to exploit the connection. Leila gazes ahead with a soft smile, reflecting on the significance of the current day. Looking toward her companion, Leila expresses her certainty about their upcoming wedding in a thought. Amidst a sea of white blossoms, the nobleman formally proposes to the pink-haired woman. Leila recalls her peaceful childhood as the favored daughter of the esteemed Count Ferry family. Her world collapsed after her mother's death and the discovery of her lack of abilities. Seeking a gifted heir, her father remarried a commoner who possessed rare and powerful healing talents. She introduces her brothers Daryl and Toby, followed by her younger sister, the gifted Emma. Leila was treated worse than a maid, enduring relentless bullying from her siblings and parents. In this world, magic is a rare gift possessed by only a select few individuals. Despite her stepmother's passing, the systematic abuse from her father and siblings never truly ceased. While gathering flowers and rags, Leila's solitary life is interrupted by an unexpected visitor's arrival. A masked guest asks for directions and surprises Leila by addressing her with formal respect.
Stunned by the polite encounter, Leila realizes he is a guest and feels her heart flutter.
She offers to be his guide while the man retrieves the floral crown she dropped. The masked man returns the wreath, reminding her that she had forgotten her handmade possession. Overwhelmed by a rare act of kindness, Leila feels a level of joy she never knew. They exchange names and she reveals her identity as Leila Ferry to the mysterious masked traveler. Upon hearing her full name, the masked man reacts with a visible and sudden flinch. He introduces himself as Allen Stanley, leading Leila to believe he is a military officer. Leila concludes their walk, privately cherishing the time spent with the polite and considerate guest. Allen asks the young woman if his presence or his stories cause her any fear. Leila confirms her lack of fear, appearing confused by the nobleman's question about her feelings. The masked man stares in silence, his expression unreadable as he observes the pink-haired girl. Allen expresses a desire to meet again, a sentiment Leila happily reciprocates before he departs. As Allen leaves, Leila's brothers approach her with hostile intentions regarding her new flower gift. Daryl mocks the crown on her head, expressing disbelief that she is wearing such an item. Toby reinforces her servant status, ordering her to focus on weeds and serving their needs. Leila reacts with shock as her brothers aggressively snatch the floral wreath from her grasp. Daryl cruelly stomps the flowers into the dirt, destroying the item Allen had just returned. Desperate and tearful, Leila begs her brothers to stop their senseless and cruel destruction. Her siblings mock her crying, stating that the mangled flowers suit her better than before. From a window, Allen watches the bullying in silence while the siblings continue their laughter. Leila laments her fate, feeling as though happiness is a luxury she is forbidden from. 2 years pass as Leila continues her chores, noting Allen's occasional visits to the house. Allen spends his time with her father and Emma, leaving Leila curious about their conversations. Allen enters the area and seeks out Leila, startling her while she is weeding the garden. He offers his help with her labor, but she asks for his heroic stories instead. Allen asks if his tales frighten her, but Leila reveals her enjoyment of his military feats. Allen is frequently sent to the borders as part of his duties to defend the country.
Although the stories are scary, Leila treasures the time she spends listening to Allen's experiences.
Allen removes his mask to reveal his scarred skin, blaming his appearance for causing fear. He looks away solemnly, fully exposing the intricate scars marking the side of his face. Leila shows immediate concern, asking if the physical wounds on his face still cause pain.
Surprised by her lack of revulsion, Allen asks if his appearance genuinely fails to disgust her.
Leila reaffirms her belief in his kindness, looking at him with a warm and sincere smile.
Touched by her compassion, Allen smiles back and compliments Leila on her own incredible kindness.
The two sit together among the roses, with Leila appreciating his willingness to talk to her. Leila smiles warmly and bids Sir Allen farewell as he prepares for his journey. Sir Allen adjusts his black mask before heading out to see the king. Leila stands amidst a field of white blossoms, watching her husband leave the mansion. He observes his lighter curse marks, realizing Leila's healing presence is successfully subduing the darkness. Sir Allen expresses relief at being helped, while Leila beams with joy at being useful. He touches his mask and credits Leila for his improved well-being since her arrival. Before departing, he tells his wife he wanted to speak with her one last time. Clasping her hands, Leila reflects on how fulfilling it feels to assist her husband's recovery. A close-up of Leila shows her concern over how the curse erodes the soul. Sir Allen is shown in a vision clutching his head as the soul-deep curse haunts him. An oppressive blue darkness represents the lingering power of the curse within his soul. She hopes that once the curse is broken, Allen will feel more than just pity. Looking downcast, she acknowledges that hoping for mutual romantic feelings is likely just wishful thinking. A text bubble against the sky indicates she believes he only feels gratitude toward her. Turning away, she reasons that she would have known by now if he truly loved her. Tears well in her eyes as she laments a one-sided love and a doomed marriage. She envisions him marrying a superior healer who can fully remove the dark curse one day. Leila worries that another healer with instant superior powers will eventually replace her beside him. Tears trickle down her face as she prioritizes his recovery over her own personal happiness. She wonders why she feels such deep sadness despite her selfless wish for his healing. Maids interrupt her somber thoughts to announce that her tea is ready in the garden. Turning toward the flowers, she resolves to stop overthinking the future and enjoy the present. A few days pass as the garden flowers are carefully tended under the bright sun. A maid approaches and asks for a moment of Leila's time, surprising the young bae. Leila finds the direct request unusual and stops to see what the maid needs from her. A maid stands by the door holding a small brown package delivered for the lady. The maid explains a parcel from the Ferry family has arrived, causing Leila immediate distress. Leila examines the package, noting the handwriting does not belong to her father at all. Recalling her abusive family, she doubts any of them would send her a genuine gift. The maid offers to dispose of the package if it makes Leila feel uncomfortable or threatened. Leila decides to open it, claiming her family's antics can no longer truly surprise her. As the maid holds the parcel, Sir Allen suddenly arrives and calls out to Leila. Leila explains that a package has just arrived from her estranged and cruel Ferry family. She asks to open it, but Allen refuses, warning that the contents could be dangerous. He takes charge of the package, stating he is responsible for the Ferry family's actions. She notes his unease, remembering how her family always treated her as a pathetic burden. Clenching her teeth, she anticipates that the parcel contains nothing but harassment from her relatives. Despite the potential malice, she insists on taking responsibility and seeing what the family sent. Inside the box, a second mask identical to Allen's signature black mask is revealed. Allen gazes intently at the mocking gift, his expression hardening behind his own mask. Leila wonders if the cruel joke was Emma's idea or if her brothers were responsible. Feeling guilty for causing Allen discomfort, she resolves to dispose of the insulting item immediately.
Allen stops her hand, warning her not to touch the suspicious and potentially dangerous item.
He admits he is uncertain if the Ferry family is truly behind the mysterious package. He suggests the gift might actually be from his enemy, the hostile nation of Duca. A close-up reveals a glowing eye and the symbol of the enemy nation, Duca. Leila asks if he might be overthinking the situation regarding her family's possible involvement. The maid gulps nervously as the tension between the couple over the package grows. The maid asks for permission to dispose of it, and Allen grants her request immediately. Leila attempts to stop him, but he insists the family connection warrants the item's destruction. Sir Allen looks on with a grim expression as the weight of the situation intensifies. Leila reflects on her status as a Stanley and wonders why she expected better of her family. Recalling her childhood of neglect, she questions if she still seeks love from her cruel relatives. Leila stops the maid, Ada, expressing a desire to prove her current happiness to her family. A cursed mask falls to the floor, emitting a dark and sinister energy that rattles the room. The masked lord stares in shock at the malevolent object that has suddenly appeared before them. Leila suggests returning the package, but the maid clarifies that the lady has the situation misunderstood. Leila reaches for the mask, determined to make the Ferry family atone for insulting her husband. Allen lunges forward and shoves Leila away, shouting a desperate warning not to touch the item.
Violent dark energy surges from the mask, striking Allen as Leila screams his name in terror.
The mask hits the floor as Allen collapses, his curse marks flaring painfully across his skin. Allen warns her to stay away from the cursed mask, while Leila laments her family's cruelty. Ada stands with the other maids, solemnly informing Leila that she is mistaken about the package. The maid reveals the package is from Duca, leaving Leila paralyzed by the sudden, terrifying revelation. Ada explains the Lord's silence was for protection, just before Allen screams in absolute agony. Allen begs Leila to flee the danger, but she refuses to leave his side during this crisis. Realizing he protected her despite the worsening curse, Leila resolves to save her husband in return. Allen fears the curse will force him to kill her, but Leila refuses to let him suffer. Leila grabs the cursed mask and holds on tight, refusing to run despite Allen's agonizing screams. A brilliant light radiates from Leila's chest as she vows to save Allen no matter what. The couple is enveloped in a powerful, glowing aura that begins to push back the darkness. Allen's eyes widen as the purifying light washes over him, signaling a shift in the curse. As the energy fades, Leila frantically calls out to her husband to check if he is alive. Allen pulls her close and asks if she is harmed, to which she tearfully confirms she's fine. He expresses profound relief, admitting he could never forgive himself if the curse had claimed her. Stunned by his words, Leila asks him to repeat what he said about his feelings for her. Embracing her amidst white blossoms, the Lord shares his immense gratitude that his wife is safe. Leila stares at him in silence, her mind racing as she processes the depth of his concern. She reflects on her belief that his care was merely pity for her lack of healing powers.
Leila recalls a memory, assuming he only showed her kindness to improve his standing with Emma.
She reflects on her long-held belief that their marriage was a calculated move for his own treatment. Looking back at their wedding, she admits she saw herself only as a tool for his recovery. Hugging him back, she realizes his warmth is genuine and something she has always deeply adored. Feeling his heartbeat, she wonders if she has been blind to his true feelings this whole time. Leila looks into his eyes and asks for permission to pose a very personal, serious question. She directly asks Allen if pity was the only reason he chose to marry her. Allen looks away for a moment before looking back to confess that he has always loved her. He admits he feared his love would be a burden because of his monstrous, cursed nature. He explains that he worried she would view his affection as nothing more than a nuisance. Leila embraces him with tears of joy, declaring her eternal and exclusive love for him in return. Allen gazes at her with uncertainty, asking if she truly loves him despite his lingering dark curse. Leila smiles brightly and reveals that her heart has belonged only to him since their childhood. She reminds him of his constant kindness, expressing how much his treatment of her has meant. Looking up at him with newfound confidence, Leila prepares to share one more heartfelt truth. She hugs him tightly and repeats her love, which is deeper than anything else in the world. The maids peek through the door and share a quiet, happy smile at the couple's romantic moment. Allen tilts Leila's head back, staring at her with an intensity that speaks of his deep affection. The distance between them vanishes as they lean in, finally ready to bridge the gap between them. They share a passionate kiss among roses as Leila realizes his affection was always real and true. Allen pulls her into a close embrace, confessing his desire for her as she blushes with happiness.
Allen speaks to Leila about the formal way she currently addresses him.
He requests she stop using titles and treat him simply as her husband.
Leila beams with joy as she agrees to call him Allen from now on.
The narration confirms that their hearts are finally united in a proper marriage.
They spend their nights together to confirm their mutual love beyond mere curse treatment.
Allen gazes tenderly at his wife during an intimate moment, whispering her name softly.
Leila responds to him with a flushed face as they share a private, loving embrace.
A serene atmosphere settles over the couple as they rest together among blooming roses. Standing in the garden, Leila calls out to Allen from below his balcony window. Allen opens the window to greet his wife as she waits in the courtyard. Leila happily presents a bouquet of vibrant yellow flowers that have just finished blooming. Allen compliments her, stating that she is far more beautiful than any garden flower. Ada clears her throat to interrupt their flirting, causing Allen to look away bashfully. Allen fondly recalls how Leila has picked flowers for him since they were children. Leila reflects on the past, noting picking flowers was her only way to help. Allen confesses his enduring love while Leila playfully pouts about his teasing nature. Ada jokingly warns the couple to stop their public affection or lose their tea time sweets.
Giggling, Leila apologizes to the maid and prepares to head inside for their team.
Ada observes Leila's newfound confidence, a change that Allen notes with a satisfied smile. The maid encourages her lord to finish his work quickly to join his wife. The couple enjoys a quiet, formal dinner together while Ada stands by to serve. Allen announces they've received a royal invitation to the king's coronation anniversary party.
The news causes Leila to drop her fork against her plate in sheer wide-eyed surprise.
Leila is stunned that the king would personally invite her husband to such prestige. Allen explains he saved the king's life from a curse on the battlefield once. He continues his meal while Leila watches him with an expression of profound admiration. Saving the king is his greatest pride, despite the heavy price he personally paid. Leila realizes Allen's monster nickname resulted from the curse he took for the king. She recalls Emma's cruel words and contrasts them with the kind man before her. Leila reflects on how Allen will do anything to protect the things he holds dear. Swallowing her food, she silently resolves to stay by his side and support him forever. Allen pauses mid-meal to tell Leila that he is thinking of a specific plan. He looks at her directly and asks if she will accompany him to the party. Surprised by the request, Leila asks if he is certain he wants her to go. She expresses worry that her presence might cause social complications for him at the palace. Leila gasps as Allen moves closer, his masked face filling her immediate field of vision. Her eyes sparkle with emotion as she calls out to him during the intense moment. Allen reveals his desire to show the king his current state of happiness and health. Overwhelmed with joy, Leila tearfully agrees to attend the royal event together by his side. He reaches out and takes her hand, sealing their promise to face the court together. Allen warns her that the hostile Ferry family will likely be present at the celebration. Leila remains undeterred, proudly declaring her status as a member of the Stanley family now. Ada enters to ask if she should clear the table and bring the tea service. Allen declines the tea, pulling Leila up from her seat while still holding her hand. He admits he wants to be alone with his wife as soon as humanly possible. Ada smiles warmly and agrees to follow her lord's romantic command without any further delay. Leila lets out a startled cry as Allen suddenly lifts her up into his arms. He carries her toward their private quarters, noting that they have a long night ahead. Leila laughs happily at his boldness while they walk past the blooming roses indoors.
Ada finishes preparing Leila, who looks breathtaking in a formal red and white party gown.
Ada praises Leila's beauty while the young woman worries about appearing strange beside her husband. The maid offers various hair accessories, though her lady decides to trust her artistic judgment. Brushing her hair, Ada fondly recalls the day the nervous girl first arrived at the mansion. She compares Leila's arrival to an injured bird but notes that things have changed significantly. The maid expresses pride in how her lady has finally found the strength to fly. After finishing the hairstyle, Ada encourages her mistress to maintain her confidence and stay safe. Beaming with gratitude, Leila thanks her loyal maid for all the support and care provided. Ada announces that preparations are complete and they only need to wait for the Lord. A knock at the door signals Allen's arrival as the maid invites him to enter. Allen enters the room, dressed in formal attire and his mask, looking every bit the noble. Leila asks if something is wrong when she notices his stunned silence upon seeing her. He confesses that her beauty has completely overwhelmed him, leaving him in a state of shock. Leila blushes at the compliment while Ada quietly interrupts the romantic tension with a cough. Taking her hand, Allen warns her of the potential social discomfort she may face tonight. He asks if she is truly ready to stand by him, and she firmly confirms.
Leila expresses a fierce determination to prove her current happiness to the judgmental Ferry family.
Appreciating her spirit, Allen orders a carriage prepared for their arrival at the royal palace.
He vows to protect her from any harm as they prepare to face the elite court.
The scene shifts to the grand hall of the royal palace filled with murmuring aristocratic guests. The king presides over the anniversary celebration from his throne as nobles pay their respects. Groups of guests socialize and laugh, unaware of the drama about to unfold with the newcomers. The party continues with nobles enjoying wine and gossip within the palace's opulent sunlit corridors. A guest expresses interest in relying on Emma's legendary healing abilities should any trouble arise. Leila's father agrees, boastfully offering to arrange meetings with his daughter at any given time.
A noble bows respectfully to Emma, who stands confidently at the center of the attention.
Emma takes a drink from her glass, looking unimpressed by the standard festivities surrounding her. She tells her father that she has no desire to waste her powers on others. Her relatives remind her that commoners and nobles alike would be grateful for her touch. Emma arrogantly declares that her healing power is a divine gift straight from the gods themselves. She tells Daryl not to associate his lowly status with her superior, divinely blessed existence. Toby interrupts the bickering to remind the family that Leila is expected to arrive today. Emma mocks Leila's appearance, eagerly anticipating how miserable her sister will look with the monster. The brothers discuss how rare it is for the reclusive Marquess to attend a public function. Daryl notes his monstrous nature as Emma celebrates having severed all personal ties with Allen. Their father pragmatically observes that despite the rumors, Allen remains a powerful and influential Marquess. Emma's expression sours into a sharp glare as she listens to her father's objective assessment. Infuriated, she asks if her father truly believes she should have wed the masked monster instead. She questions if he expects her to have been intimate with such a creature. Emma realizes they can use Leila's marriage to the Stanley family as a strategic political shield. Daryl agrees they should exploit the Marquess's rank while his brother notes the risk of the curse. Toby watches silently, his internal thoughts revealing a deep bitterness over Leila's choice of husband. Daryl notices his brother's reaction and snidely asks if he still harbors feelings for Leila. He insults Toby's taste in women while Emma dismisses Leila as a shabby and worthless individual. Toby stares intensely, thinking that his siblings are completely blind to Leila's true hidden charm. Emma mockingly assures him that seeing Leila's degraded state will soon clear his misguided mind. She laughs at the absurdity of Leila even attempting to blend in at such a prestigious event. Toby internally compares Leila to a diamond who will eventually outshine his arrogant sister Emma. He reveals a dark obsession, wishing to have taken Leila as his mistress if possible. The blonde brother looks away as the atmosphere at the party grows thick with anticipation. An announcer formally heralds the arrival of Marquess Stanley and his wife, capturing everyone's attention. Daryl notes the couple's arrival as the Ferry family watches the ballroom entrance expectantly. Emma's eye widens in shock as she reacts to the sight before her. A woman with cascading pink hair enters the ballroom, her red gown sparkling under the lights. Leila smiles gently, her elegance catching the attention of the gathered aristocratic guests. Standing proudly together, Marquess Allen and his wife Leila radiate a newfound confidence and beauty. The grand hall fills with murmurs as the couple begins their formal walk across the room. Allen bows and apologizes for the interruption, politely inviting the guests to continue their festivities. Guests whisper about the arrival of the monster Marquess, noting his presence at the royal celebration. The crowd is captivated by Leila, with many guests commenting on her loveliness and striking beauty. Hand in hand, Allen and Leila proceed through the hall as the focus of the entire party. The couple moves deeper into the palace ballroom, leaving a trail of stunned guests in their wake. Toby confirms his prior assessment of Leila's potential, stunned by her stunning transformation and presence. Grinding his teeth, Toby bitterly thinks he deserved Leila more than the man he considers a monster. Emma trembles in disbelief while guests remark that Leila is too fine a woman for Allen. Emma dismissively tells her companions that Leila's new appearance doesn't change her lack of magical abilities. A nobleman suggests Leila's beauty alone makes her an ideal wife, infuriating Emma as she listens.
Glaring at her sister, Emma insists Leila is still a failure compared to her own superior status.
Emma seethes with rage, reminding herself that her special bloodline makes her uniquely important. A guest quickly apologizes to Emma, praising her fabulous abilities to appease her obvious anger.
Daryl reinforces Emma's ego by noting her rare healing powers, while she demands they remember their place.
The brothers watch the couple in silence, their expressions guarded as the social dynamics shift.
A guest peers from behind her fan, observing the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Leila expresses concern for Allen, who assures her he is used to the gossip before moving forward.
The king sits upon his throne, presiding over the celebration from the far end of the hall. The king welcomes Allen and Lady Stanley, expressing his sincere gratitude for their attendance at the banquet.
Addressing the room, the king identifies Allen as his savior and encourages them to enjoy the night.
Allen offers his respects, congratulating the king on 15 years of reign and wishing prosperity for the nation. The king graciously thanks Allen and compliments him on having such a beautiful wife.
Allen smiles warmly at the king's praise, admitting that Leila is almost too good for him. Allen addresses his sovereign, stating he has a specific example to show him regarding his current state.
Allen asks the king if he will look at his face, surprising the monarch with the request.
The Marquess begins to pull back his mask, preparing to reveal himself to the entire royal court.
A collective gasp of shock ripples through the guests as they witness Allen's bold actions.
Emma's face pales with horror as she watches the unfolding scene with wide-eyed terror.
Allen lowers his mask, revealing a handsome face that shows no signs of the rumored monstrous curse.
Standing unmasked among the flowers, Allen's clear features leave the murmuring crowd in a state of awe.
Guests exclaim in disbelief, questioning how the curse was lifted and where his mark has gone.
A noblewoman murmurs behind her fan, her perception of the monster Marquess completely shattered. Emma stares at the man she rejected, her mind reeling as she declares the situation impossible. Screaming in denial, Emma insists nobody should have more power than her, especially not anyone who healed Allen. Daryl suggests that a half-hearted healer couldn't have done it, leaving Emma looking wounded by the implication.
Furious, Emma asks Daryl if he is suggesting that her own healing abilities are half-hearted.
Daryl backtracks, explaining he sent Allen to her family specifically because he trusted her renowned skills. Emma laughs dismissively once satisfied, while Toby remains lost in his own deep, silent thoughts. Daryl whispers to Toby that Allen must have found a healer far superior to Emma, despite the unlikelihood. Looking suspicious, Daryl ponders if Allen is hiding a secret about how he was truly healed.
Allen reveals that while the curse remains, his current healing is entirely thanks to his wife, Leila.
The announcement sends another wave of murmurs through the crowd, focusing everyone's attention back on Leila. Emma is gripped by a cold dread, unable to accept that her useless sister performed the miracle. The king looks at the young woman with interest, asking Leila to tell him her man. Leila introduces herself and reveals her healing powers, shocking the gathered court with her announcement.
She specifies that her healing abilities are meant solely for the benefit of her husband, Allen.
The king expresses astonishment, questioning the validity of Leila possessing such a rare magical gift. Leila maintains her composure and offers to perform a demonstration of her healing power for him. Guests murmur in disbelief at the immense size and radiant glow of Leila's holy healing crest. Emma loudly denounces Leila as a fraud, insisting her sister has never possessed any magical abilities. Toby notes that some powers manifest late, but Emma furiously rejects the possibility regarding her sister.
Daryl trembles as he realizes Leila's power would have allowed her to marry into royalty.
Daryl slumps in regret as Emma desperately reminds him that she supports the family with her power.
Daryl shuts Emma down, stating that Leila's healing abilities are objectively far more powerful than hers.
Toby points out that the sheer magnitude of Leila's crest puts her far beyond Emma's level. Emma turns away in a huff, arguing that having some power is better than having none.
Toby looks at his sister with a cold expression, preparing to deliver a harsh, final truth. Toby challenges Emma, asking if she has ever used her sacred power for anyone but herself. Infuriated by the comparison, Emma screams for Toby to shut up while he insults her power. Toby and Daryl share a calculating nod as they shift their focus toward their powerful sister. The brothers decide to exploit Leila, believing she won't be able to refuse her own family. They plan to manipulate Leila's kind nature, viewing her as an easier target than the prideful Emma. The king tells Allen he has found a wonderful partner as the couple stands before him. Allen smiles warmly, expressing his hope that his curse continues to recede under Leila's care. Allen admits his internal struggles, while the king offers a sincere apology for his past treatment. The king encourages them to enjoy the festivities and officially entrusts Allen's health to Leila. Leila glows with happiness as she accepts the responsibility of looking after her beloved husband. The ballroom fills with chatter as guests admire the lovely and elegant wife of Marquess Stanley. A nobleman approaches with a fake smile, claiming to be an old friend of the Marquess.
Leila remains skeptical, correctly identifying him as someone who abandoned Allen during his darkest times.
A crowd of opportunistic guests swarms Leila, begging her to treat their various illnesses and complaints.
Leila looks toward Allen for support, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden, insincere attention from the nobles.
Allen turns toward the crowd and coldly declares that he does not recognize any of them.
Noblewomen blush and approach Allen, falsely claiming they have been worried about him all along.
A guest offers tea, but Allen dismisses them, noting his curse is not yet fully lifted.
Allen walks away from the crowd, stating he will only listen once his recovery is complete. Leila gazes at Allen in surprise, impressed by his firm handling of the parasitic noble guests.
Emma curtsies before the Marquess, putting on a show of humility and using a sweet tone.
Allen and Leila pause as Emma blocks their path, her expression one of forced, polite regret.
Emma tearfully claims she is in deep regret over her past coldness and refusal to help.
She shamelessly boasts that our healing powers are actually much more effective and reliable than Leila's.
Emma winks and suggests they start over, promising the Marquess that he won't regret choosing her.
Emma internally gloats, certain that Allen will inevitably choose her over her sister if she welcomes him.
Leila looks up at Allen with a worried expression, waiting to see his reaction to Emma.
Allen stares coldly at Emma, telling her she is completely misunderstanding the nature of his heart.
Allen declares his absolute love for Leila, firmly rejecting Emma's desperate attempt to win him back.
Emma seethes with rage, realizing she threw away a handsome husband with such high social status.
Emma's internal thoughts overflow with bitterness as she considers Leila unworthy of such a man.
Determined to win, Emma decides to keep pushing until the Marquess recognizes her supposed superior worth.
The party chatter continues as the couple moves toward the Ferry family members across the hall.
Allen addresses Count Ferry by name, causing the older man to flinch at the Marquess's presence.
Allen expresses his gratitude for Leila, while Leila thanks her father for her current happiness.
Count Ferry acts dismissively, while Leila sincerely thanks him for the marriage that changed her life.
Her brothers offer shallow compliments on her beauty, leaving Leila looking uncomfortable and skeptical.
Toby and Daryl suggest that Leila's healing powers can strengthen by spending the night with them.
Leila stares at her brothers in absolute shock and confusion following their indecent proposal.
The brothers offer to help her heal the Marquess for a small price if she agrees. Daryl leans in close, reminding Leila they raised her and questioning if she has a problem. Leila looks at Daryl and Toby with growing unease as she processes their manipulative words.
Clutching her hand, Leila wonders why they are suddenly acting this way toward her.
Leila remains determined to heal Allen, but refuses to consider her brother's inappropriate suggestion.
Allen appears suddenly and pulls Leila close to him, shielding her from her eyes.
Looking stern, Allen declares that he will not allow anyone to touch his wife.
Leila holds onto Allen's arm, feeling immense relief and thanking him for the timely rescue. Toby and Daryl scowl in annoyance, frustrated that their attempt to manipulate Leila was interrupted.
Grinding his teeth, Daryl resolves to find a way to make Leila his own eventually.
Emma rushes forward and slams into the couple, crying out as she forces her way in.
A sudden rough grab occurs as the characters collide in the middle of the ballroom. Leila's heart pounds with nervousness as Allen stands protectively between her and her sister.
Gazing up at her husband, Leila sincerely thanks her Allen for his unwavering support.
Emma approaches Allen, boastfully claiming that he is yet to see the true extent of her powers.
Winking at the Marquess, Emma insists that her healing abilities are far superior to Leila's.
Allen dismisses Emma, noting he's glad he wasn't treated by her since she couldn't lift his curse. Infuriated, Emma screams that Leila is a fraud and must be deceiving everyone about her powers.
Leila is visibly hurt by the accusation, insisting she would never lie about having such abilities.
Allen challenges the group, asking if any of them ever bothered to confirm Leila's magical potential.
The brothers and father stand in silence as Allen points out their failure to notice Leila's gift.
Toby and the Count admit they never checked, though they still find the revelation unbelievable. Daryl demands proof, suggesting that the couple is putting on a fake show for the court.
Leila looks down in shame, blaming herself for keeping her healing powers a secret for years.
Allen offers another demonstration, but Toby argues that a magical crest can be easily faked.
Deciding to take matters into his own hands, Daryl reaches for a knife from the table.
Daryl slashes his hand and challenges Leila to prove her powers by healing him right now.
Leila knows she can heal him easily, but hesitates, wondering if it's appropriate to do so.
She glances toward Allen, worried that performing the miracle might cause him some public discomfort.
Allen smiles warmly, encouraging Leila to heal the injury and showing complete confidence in her.
Closing her eyes, Leila summons her power and manifests a brilliant, glowing, golden healing crest.
Toby and Daryl stand frozen in awe as they witness the overwhelming radiance of Leila's magic.
Count Ferry clutches his head in despair, realizing the immense fortune he lost by dismissing Leila. Allen and Leila prepare to depart, leaving a fuming Emma behind as they thank the Count. Leila bids her family a final farewell, promising to live a happy life with her husband.
The crowd desperately apologizes to Allen, hoping to gain favor and access to Leila's incredible healing.
Allen looks at the opportunistic guests with disgust, noting their lack of shame after their previous insults.
Leila is happy that everyone finally sees Allen's charm, even if their motives are questionable. Allen tells Leila he only cares if she sees his charm, making her giggle with delight.
The couple walks through the grand hall as onlookers watch their graceful and unified exit.
Watching them leave, Daryl seethes with rage and refuses to let a monster keep his sister. The celebration continues in the palace while the Marquess and his wife make their exit.
Emma is consumed by jealousy, hating that her useless sister secured such a powerful, handsome man. Emma feels betrayed by her brothers, who now praise Leila and treat Emma like a failure. She realizes her father only values Leila now because she could have been sold for more. Gripping her skirt, Emma vows not to forgive them for overlooking her own established magical abilities.
Emma plots to sabotage her sister, determined to force Leila back into a miserable, shabby state. A wicked smile crosses Emma's face as she decides that suffering is the only state suitable for Leila.
Mercenaries ask Emma what they can do to assist an ability user such as herself.
The group of men drink champagne while preparing to listen to the blonde woman's request.
Emma asks if the men are interested in the leftovers from her sister's healing process.
The man suggests selling the Count's daughter's bodily fluids as they would fetch a high price.
Emma smiles wickedly, asking if they want money and offering to deliver the Marquess's wife.
Emma shamelessly instructs the three men to cooperate and turn a woman into damaged goods.
The men grin at the prospect, asking the blonde woman to provide more specific details.
Emma smiles sinisterly, confirming she is more than happy to elaborate on her dark plan.
Marquess Stanley sits at his desk and prepares to open a stack of incoming letters.
A close-up shows the Marquess tearing open an envelope to read its likely frustrating contents.
Ada the maid notes Leila's problematic family while Allen reviews the numerous letters they sent.
Allen sighs, noting how persistent the Ferry family is by sending letters every single day.
Allen crumbles a letter in anger, realizing they only want to exploit Leila's healing abilities.
Ada is disgusted by their behavior, wondering what they take her lady's special abilities for. Allen admits he would inform Leila if they actually needed help, but their motives are impure.
Allen realizes the true danger lies in the fact that Leila's brothers are after her. A haunting narration reveals that her brothers are actually after her body for their power.
Allen grits his teeth, knowing they are using a myth to take advantage of Leila.
Ada suggests that it is better not to tell Lady Leila about these disturbing letters.
Allen agrees, ordering the maid to intercept all such letters before his wife sees them.
He reflects on their past cruelty, furious that they are now pretending to be good-willed.
Staring intensely, Allen vows never to let them touch Leila because she is his alone.
The Marquess tosses the crumpled remains of the manipulative letter into the trash bin.
He chuckles to himself, acknowledging that he has recently become far more possessive of Leila.
Allen explains that Leila can heal minor injuries with a simple touch of her hand.
He instructs Ada to accept legitimate healing requests on Leila's behalf for those minor tasks.
Ada pauses and asks the Lord another question regarding the family members they are monitoring.
She notes Emma hasn't sent a letter, leading Allen to suspect she is plotting something separately.
Allen orders Ada to investigate everyone who attended the party at the royal palace recently. Later, Allen prepares to depart the estate as Leila stands nearby to see him off.
Allen explains he must meet the king's associates and promises to return very shortly.
Leila smiles warmly at her husband and tells him that she understands the situation.
The Marquess leans in and kisses Leila's forehead in a tender display of public affection.
The maids watching from the background blush and giggle at the couple's romantic moment. Allen whispers a suggestive comment to Leila, telling her they should continue this later tonight.
Leila blushes a deep shade of red, flustered by Allen's bold and flirtatious parting words.
Allen bids her farewell while Leila tells him to take care during his business trek.
Leila watches with a lingering gaze as her husband walks through the grand exit doors. She reflects on how they have been the center of attention since the royal party.
A sense of unease washes over Leila as she hopes Allen remains safe while away. Sometime later, Leila waits in the hall and hears frantic chatter approaching her position. A man with freckles and blue hair rushes toward Ada, asking what has happened. Ada looks toward Leila with a worried expression, letting out a heavy, concerned sigh.
The man delivers shocking news, claiming that Marquess Stanley has collapsed at the palace. The messenger claims he was present during the collapse and rushed to inform the lady.
He urges her to move quickly, claiming there is no time to waste right now.
Leila asks if Allen is okay, but the man shakes his head with a grim expression.
Overwhelmed by fear for her husband's life, Leila cries out his name in desperation. The man roughly grabs Leila's arm, ordering her to follow him to the palace immediately. Leila agrees to go, but asks him to release her hand, looking suspicious and uncomfortable.
The blue-haired man insists Leila come with him immediately while tightly squeezing her wrist.
Leila acknowledges the urgency of the situation, but remains unsettled by a lingering suspicion.
The blue-haired man stares at Leila with a cold, unreadable expression.
He releases her arm and apologizes for his rudeness while urging her to hurry.
Ada whispers her doubts to Leila, convinced that the news of Allen's collapse is false.
The messenger maintains his story, claiming he personally witnessed the Marquess fall at the palace.
Leila worries that the attention Allen has received lately has finally led to something terrible.
She tells Ada that she is the only person capable of stopping Allen's curse.
Leila insists on leaving immediately and places the management of the household in Ada's care.
Ada watches Leila leave with a deeply troubled expression, fearing for her mistress's safety. The man leads Leila away, thanking her for the decision while a carriage waits nearby.
Leila looks back one last time, entrusting the rest of the household duties to Ada.
Ada bids her mistress a careful farewell as a dark, ominous energy begins to loom.
Seeing the plain carriage, Leila questions if it truly came from the royal palace.
The blue-haired messenger ignores her concerns and tells her that they must move faster.
Leila questions the carriage's lack of a crest, but the man confirms its royal origins.
He explains that the urgency prevented him from obtaining a carriage with the royal crest. The man claims he borrowed the vehicle from the palace stables to avoid further delays.
He shuts the carriage door firmly as the scene shifts toward their departure.
The carriage rattles away from the estate, passing through the grand gates and into the distance.
Looking out the window, Leila realizes they are not traveling toward the royal palace.
She notes with alarm that the carriage is actually moving deeper into the capital city. Leila demands to know their location and if they have reached the palace yet.
Her questions are met only by an eerie silence from the man outside the carriage.
Gripping her chest, Leila feels a wave of intense dread as she suspects a trap. The carriage eventually stops in a dark, dilapidated alleyway far from the royal district.
The man roughly pulls Leila out of the carriage and orders her to get out.
Leila asks where they are, but the man merely points toward a nearby builder.
Confusion turns to terror as Leila realizes Allen would never be in such a place. Suddenly, a hand strikes Leila across the face, causing her to cry out in pain.
The man tells her to stop complaining and orders her to enter the building immediately.
Leila desperately pulls back and screams for help, hoping someone nearby will hear her.
She continues to cry out for anyone as the man drags her toward the group.
The messenger shoves Leila through the doorway, causing her to stumble into the dark room.
The man presents Leila to a group of thugs who mockingly ask for her healing. Two men jeer at her, one feigning a stomachache while the other demands treatment.
Leila realizes Allen is not there and that she has been lured into a trap.
The thug orders her to start healing and roughly grabs her face to intimidate her.
Forced into compliance, Leila uses her magic to heal the deep gash on the man's arm.
The thugs are impressed by her power, while the messenger discusses her high market value.
Leila shudders with horror as she hears the men talking about selling her like property. A thug agrees to the conditions, noting the Marquess is a beauty worth the act of sullying.
Realizing the gravity of her situation, Leila knows she must escape at any cost.
Leila attempts to flee, but a thug catches her and mocks her for trying to run.
The man slams Leila down, pinning her to the surface as she struggles in vain. He grabs her again, claiming they only want her for her healing and other services.
Leila is consumed by fear and pleads for the men to stay away from her.
The thugs make crude remarks about her virtue, intending to take advantage of her status.
Leila lies helpless and weeping, desperately wishing to escape this nightmare.
A thug asks the noble if they should show the current scene to a certain somebody.
The brown-haired man with the headband mocks Leila, telling her she won't need her fine dress anymore.
Leila screams for the man to stop as he ruthlessly rips the fabric of her elegant gown.
The two thugs laugh maliciously, plotting to break Leila for fun before selling her to profit.
Desperate and terrified, Leila struggles against her captors while pleading for them to let her go.
Emma suddenly enters the room, mocking Leila's pathetic state as the thugs pin the noblewoman down.
Leila hears the familiar voice and looks up in shock, realizing her sister is behind the betrayal. Emma snickers and confirms her presence, admitting she came to witness Leila becoming a commoner's plaything.
Staring at her sister in disbelief, Leila demands to know why Emma would do something so cruel.
Emma stares coldly at Leila, claiming she doesn't deserve a great man like Marquess Stanley. Emma gloats about her plan to take the Marquess while Leila is sold off in rags.
Leila tries to reach out to her sister, but Emma remains focused on her goal of usurpation.
Emma laughs at her sister's misery, declaring that Allen's love will turn cold upon seeing Leila's degradation.
Leila continues to struggle and screams for Emma to stop this madness, but her pleas are ignored.
Emma mocks Leila's look of despair, imagining the immorality of Leila being forced to serve other men. The thug grows impatient while Emma encourages him to humiliate Leila to his heart's content. Emma manically laughs, declaring that no matter how much Leila yells, the Marquess would never find them.
Marquess Stanley suddenly bursts through the door, eyes glowing with rage as he orders everyone away from Leila.
Leila calls out to her husband in relief while Emma looks back in absolute shock and disbelief.
Allen draws his sword and discards his mask, repeating his demand for the thugs to release his wife. Facing the cowed mercenaries, Allen points his blade and asks if they would rather die than comply.
Leila wraps herself in a cloth to cover her torn dress as the thugs quickly move away. Allen rushes to Leila's side, checking for injuries while she cries out his name in emotional relief.
Allen pulls Leila into a tight embrace, apologizing for taking so long to find her during the ordeal.
Emma demands to know how Allen discovered their secret location, her expression twisted with frustration and fear.
Allen levels his sword at Emma's throat, focusing his intense and vengeful gaze solely on the blonde woman.
Allen explains he learned about the Ferry family's suspicious activities and Emma's disreputable associations from the king.
Shocked by the revelation, Emma realizes her secret dealings were uncovered while Allen continues to glare at her.
Emma tries to lie, claiming she followed orders, but she is clearly terrified by the Marquess's presence. Allen reveals he had already been monitoring Emma and noticed her plotting separately from her brothers.
He recounts how Emma gathered collaborators and moved faster than the royal assistants could initially stop.
Allen clenches his jaw in anger, admitting he is aggravated by his own failure to protect Leila sooner.
He reflects on the dilapidated surroundings, regretful of the time it took to reach this specific location. Turning back to his wife, Allen expresses deep regret for the frightening experience Leila had to endure.
Tears well up in Leila's eyes as she looks at her husband, processing the night's trauma.
Allen turns his cold gaze back to Emma, promising to kill her if she ever harms Leila again.
Emma clenches her teeth in frustration before trying to beg the Marquess to hear her out.
Emma decides to use her last resort, pulling a small spray bottle out from behind her back.
Emma rubs against Allen and inappropriately suggests that she and Leila could heal him together.
Allen stares at Emma with a look of pure disgust, completely unmoved by her desperate and crude advances. Suddenly, Emma sprays a purple mist into the air, shocking Allen as she attempts to bewitch him.
Emma gloats about her sorcerer-made love potion, recalling how she has already confirmed its effectiveness.
Emma grins wickedly, anticipating that Allen will fall for her and become hers right before Leila's eyes.
Emma mockingly apologizes for her slip of the hand as Allen stands motionless in the purple mist.
Emma commands Allen to look at her passionately while Allen prepares to shove the blonde woman away. Allen shoves Emma away with such force that she falls to the ground in total confusion.
Emma looks up in terror as the thugs she hired begin to leer at her with malicious intent.
Emma tries to assert her status as a healer to ward off the thugs' leering gazes.
Allen explains the potion is useless because his body is already consumed by a much stronger curse.
Allen raises his sword again, suggesting that Emma must really want to perish for her foolish trick.
Leila cries out to Allen, pleading for him not to kill her sister despite Emma's heinous actions. One night, Leila stood by the window as she reflected on the events unfolding at the house.
Walking down the hall, Leila heard a voice from behind a door refuse to heal someone.
Hearing Sir Allen's name, Leila peeked inside and heard her father begging Emma to help him since he arrived under the king's orders. Emma refused, stating she was too scared to heal someone who wears such an eerie mask and looks so creepy. Narration notes that healing is not something that can be done so easily.
Simple physical contact with the hand is described as a somewhat effective method for healing others.
It is noted that Emma's specific healing powers are insufficient to treat the mark on Sir Allen's face.
To truly enhance healing abilities, the most effective method involves exchanging bodily fluids by spending the night together.
Her father warned Emma that her refusal could jeopardize the family's succession, but she remained stubborn. Emma shouted that she did not want to be near such an eerie person and refused to do it.
Leila realized Allen only showed her kindness to leave a positive impression on her sister Emma. She concluded that his sympathy was just a way to project a better version of himself to her sibling.
Emma shouted her final refusal from behind the door, vowing to heal anyone else besides him.
Leila wished for healing powers so she could treat Allen and receive genuine love instead of pity. She lamented her situation, thinking she would have treated him if she possessed Emma's gifts.
Tears fell as Leila realized for the first time just how much she loved Sir Allen.
Despite her sadness, Leila acknowledged her lingering desire to see the masked man once again.
Looking at Allen's scarred face, Leila reflected on how much she longed for that kind person.
Gazing at her mother in bed, Leila wondered if her current experiences were all just a dream. In a memory, Leila's mother told her to listen closely while Leila begged her not to die. Her mother apologized for leaving her and promised Leila that she was a bud that would eventually bloom with love. Leila tearfully called out to her mother as she shared her final words of comfort. 1 week later, the masked nobleman returned to the Ferry residence for another visit.
While Leila worked in the garden, Sir Allen sat quietly on a nearby bench observing her labor.
Leila felt compelled to do something for Allen, but lamented that she could only offer him flowers. She wanted to show him kindness since Emma rejected him and he traveled so far to visit.
Leila hoped this simple bouquet she gathered might bring even a small amount of comfort to Allen's heart. Leila turned around and called out to Sir Allen as she prepared to approach him. Leila tripped and fell forward, but Allen moved quickly to catch her and check if she was okay.
Allen suddenly groaned in intense pain, causing a worried Leila to ask if he was all right.
Consumed by a murderous rage, Allen pinned Leila to the ground and threatened to kill everyone around him. His eyes glowed with a terrifying light as he declared everyone was his enemy.
Leila gasped for air as she realized the mark on Allen's face was merely a physical reflection of a deeper curse in his heart. As Allen ranted about killing his enemies, Leila realized he was being controlled by a painful curse. She wished she had the power to make his suffering vanish and save him from the agony. Leila felt a wave of intense frustration at her inability to provide the healing that Allen needed.
Leila felt a sting of jealousy toward Emma for possessing the power to help Allen and choosing not to. She reflected on how much pain he was in while her sister did nothing.
In the depths of her desperation, Leila pleaded for the strength to heal him.
Leila reached out her hand in a final attempt to offer whatever comfort or strength she could.
A sudden, blinding light erupted between them, and the two sat together as the intensity faded.
Leila began to cough while a concerned Sir Allen watched her and checked on her well-being. Despite her own physical distress, Leila smiled brightly and expressed her relief that Allen was okay.
Overcome with guilt, Allen apologized repeatedly and questioned the harm he might have done to her.
Leila reassured him that no apology was necessary, insisting that she was happy just to see him safe.
Stunned by her unwavering compassion, Allen looked at Leila with an expression of deep emotion and disbelief.
Allen knelt on the ground and questioned why she was being so kind to him.
Allen slumped forward in shame, unable to understand how she could remain kind to someone who tried to hurt her. Observing his trembling form, Leila realized that the man before her was likely overcome with tears.
Allen confessed that he lived in isolation to protect others, but his resolve wavered because of her. He admitted he despised his cursed nature and distanced himself to avoid hurting anyone.
Allen admitted that he finally allowed himself to be moved by the genuine kindness Leila offered.
Leila beamed with joy as she watched the man finally accept her humble gift of flowers.
Allen stated they should no longer meet for her safety, but Leila immediately protested his decision. Leila begged him not to leave, pointing out that she was unharmed and still wished to stay by his side.
Leila tearfully explained that her life would be far lonelier without his visits and pleaded for him to stay.
Leila assumed Allen's concern was born of pity for her standing as an outcast in her family. She suspected his kind words were merely pity disguised as sympathy for someone scorned at home. Despite her deep affection, Leila accepted that he might never return the same love she felt.
Surrounded by the quiet garden, Allen bowed his head once more and offered a final heartfelt apology.
Leila resolved to cherish her one-sided love for Sir Allen in secret for the rest of her life. 2 full years passed in the wake of that emotional afternoon in the Ferry family garden.
Leila sighed heavily as she continued her mundane chores, still trapped in the same repetitive labor.
Emma questions why the Marquess continues to endure such suffering for Leila's sake.
Allen's eye glows with a terrifying intensity as he feels an unprecedented level of rage.
Leila gazes at her husband, moved by the depth of the anger he feels for her.
Guards burst in as Allen identifies Emma as the culprit and orders her immediate arrest.
Emma panics as the guard sees her, desperately claiming she was forced into the scheme.
Allen dismisses her pleas, stating she can tell her story once she is in a cell. The guards roughly lead the bound Emma and her hired thugs away to face justice.
Allen embraces his weeping wife, apologizing for the time it took to reach her side.
Leila blames her own naivete for the trap but expresses pure relief that Allen is safe.
Allen regrets underestimating Emma's malice, never imagining she would harm her own sister so cruelly.
Leila reflects on her sister's lifelong hatred, still struggling to process the night's horrific betrayal.
As Leila weeps, Allen holds her tightly and deeply regrets not eliminating Emma when he could.
Leila begs Allen to stop, insisting she wants no more people hurt because of her.
Allen asks if she truly cannot find anger for the woman who tried to destroy her.
Allen vows to be angry on her behalf, promising to protect her from anyone else's touch.
Leila rests her hand against him, assuring her husband that his protective anger is not selfish.
Lost in his embrace, Leila realizes that her heart belongs solely to her husband. A close-up reveals the softening gaze of the Marquess as he looks upon his beloved. The couple shares a passionate and tender kiss amidst a beautiful bloom of white flowers.
Leila's only thought in this peaceful moment is her desire to finally heal her husband.
In a dark dungeon, Emma screams that the entire situation is Leila's fault while blaming others. Gripping the cold iron bars, Emma demands to be heard so she can vilify her sister.
A guard tells her to be quiet, but Emma defiantly snaps back at the lowly soldier.
Emma insists that as a countess, she still possesses the right to explain her side.
The guard sighs and tells her to accept that the investigation is finished and she is stuck.
He grins maliciously, mocking her status as a healer and asking crude questions about her past.
Emma flinches in terror as the guard suggestively rattles his keys while approaching her cell. The guard suggests she heal his ears, causing Emma to scream and retreat in absolute horror. Narration explains Emma was pardoned to work at a church clinic because of her healing skills.
The full extent of Leila's abuse was revealed, causing the Ferry household to lose its title.
Stripped of their nobility, Leila's father and brothers are forced to move into the common city. The 3 men walk away with their belongings, their faces masks of bitterness and defeat.
Daryl adjusts his monocle and coldly declares that their family's total ruin is Leila's fault.
Toby agrees with his brother, claiming Emma would never have acted out without Leila's influence.
The brothers vow to reclaim what they believe is theirs and punish the monster Marquess.
Vengeance burns in the eyes of the brothers as they plot against the Stanley household.
A mysterious woman in elegant red attire holds a report detailing the recent palace scandals.
The woman laughs, mocking the Marquess and anticipating the twisted story of his eventual breakup.
A wicked smile crosses her face as her piercing green eye shines with malicious intent.
Allen and Leila share a quiet, intimate moment together in the safety of their bedroom.
Leila gently touches Allen's face, noticing that his dark curse mark is becoming visible again. Allen attributes the mark's return to the exhaustion of investigating Emma's plots and saving Leila.
He asks Leila to heal him, and she warmly promises to do her very best.
Allen decides to take the benefits of her healing before leaning in to kiss her.
Leila playfully warns him against going somewhere dangerous alone again, intending to teach him a lesson.
A look of surprise flashes in Leila's eyes as the mood suddenly shifts toward intimacy.
Leila flinches and gasps as Allen begins to show her exactly what he means by a lesson.
The couple is lost in a moment of deep affection surrounded by glowing white blossoms.
Despite the lingering curse, they hold each other in the hope that it will one day vanish.
Leila and Allen embrace tightly, exchanging heartfelt declarations of love as the long night ends.
Leila reflects on how the palace announcement led everyone to assume Allen's curse had vanished. A sudden sound catches Leila off guard, causing her to turn around with a startled expression. Ada sighs as she enters the room, struggling to carry a massive stack of noble invitations.
Leila approaches the maid and asks if the large pile consists entirely of letters for them.
Ada confirms they are invitations and meeting requests she planned to show Allen before discarding them.
Leila notes the hypocrisy of nobles who ignored Allen's curse but now seek his friendly attention.
Leila worries about Allen's declining health, wondering if his fatigue is beyond her healing abilities.
Ada urges Leila not to worry, placing the blame for the stress on the endless letters.
Ada suggests burning the letters and tells Leila to remain her usual kind self. Leila feels overwhelmed by the sudden shift in the nobility's attitude toward their household. A close-up shows a hand reaching out to touch the heavy stack of invitations.
Narration describes nobles arriving without appointments as a maid politely tries to turn them away.
Ada firmly explains that the Marquess is busy and visitors must have a prior appointment.
The man claims to be Allen's comrade in arms and calls the refusal to see him ridiculous.
Leila clenches her jaw, thinking the man is a coward for staying away during the curse.
A steady hand is placed firmly on a shoulder to offer a sense of support.
Allen appears behind Leila, wearing his mask as she looks up and calls his name.
Allen confirms he fought alongside the man and acknowledges the multiple letters sent previously. Allen decides to speak with the man once, despite Leila's concerns about him overexerting himself.
Allen looks down at his wife with a gentle smile, thanking her and offering reassurance.
The visitor stands in the hallway, his expression unreadable as the maid blocks his path. The man greets Allen confidently, expressing his belief that he would eventually be granted an audience.
Allen coldly demands that the man keep his explanation short and state his business immediately.
Leila stands quietly in the background, observing the tense exchange between her husband and his guest. The visitor smirks while complimenting Leila's beauty and recalling their time together in a party.
Allen glares through his mask and asks if that is his only reason for visiting. The man suggests it is wrong for a beautiful healer like Leila to help only one person.
He argues that sharing her gift is God's will. Allen tells him to stop talking.
The man insists it is illogical for a healer to focus solely on a single individual.
He claims Leila's status as a Marchioness makes her a valuable diplomatic asset for the country. Leila's heart races as she considers the historical text describing healers helping a vast number of people.
She reflects on the deep curse still plaguing Allen despite her constant and dedicated healing efforts.
The man offers to use his newspaper connections to promote Leila's righteous abilities to the public. Allen asks if the man is finished speaking, his gaze cold and imposing behind his mask.
Allen declares Leila will only heal him and refuses to let others touch her.
The visitor tries to protest, but he is clearly intimidated by the Marquess's growing intensity.
Allen's eyes glow with fury as he commands the man to leave and never return.
Leila notices Allen's curse mark is darkening and insists on healing him right away.
Leila gasps as she touches Allen's face and realizes he is suffering from a high fever.
Leila urgently orders Ada to bring some ice while the maid quickly moves to obey.
Leila apologizes for not noticing sooner, but Allen admits he was trying to hide his pain.
Allen looks at his wife tenderly and tells her she has no reason to worry.
Leila kisses her husband as she processes the depth of her love and desire to help.
Night settles over the quiet estate as a full moon shines bright above the trees.
After the healing session, the couple rests together in bed as Allen's fever finally breaks.
Leila gently touches the mark on Allen's face, saddened that it shows no sign of vanishing.
Allen asks about her concerns. Leila admits she wishes she had more power to help him.
Allen explains the curse is tied to his soul before pulling her in for a kiss.
Narration notes the arrival of a royal palace notice stating the king has fallen hell.
Nobles criticize the Stanley household for not visiting, unaware Allen is hiding his active curse.
Leila and Allen decide to visit the king despite the recent rumors about them.
Walking through the palace, the couple ignores the watchful gazes of the surrounding nobles.
Relieved, Allen notes that the king's condition appears less serious than he had initially feared.
Leila smiles brightly, expressing her gratitude that the king will soon be back on his feet. Concerned for his health, Leila suggests they head home, and Allen agrees to leave of her.
As they prepare to depart, the sound of approaching footsteps stops the couple in their tracks.
Two noblemen confront Allen, mocking him for daring to enter the palace with his cursed body.
Confused by the sudden hostility, Leila asks Allen to identify the two men standing before them.
Allen whispers for Leila to stay behind him, identifying the pair as men who hold grudges.
Acknowledging their insults, Allen calmly states that they were already in the process of leaving.
The men continue their mockery, expressing disbelief that Allen didn't claim his curse was already gone. Leila attempts to defend Allen by speaking about his curse, but her words are cut short. A tense silence settles between the couple as they face the blatant animosity of the nobles.
Turning toward the men, Allen offers a formal apology for the delay in addressing Sir Stanley.
Sir Stanley insults Allen's reputation and his refusal to use his power, causing Leila to shiver. Allen demands they leave Leila out of the conflict, insisting he is the target of their hate.
Smirking, the gray-haired nobleman brands Allen a monstrosity while addressing Leila with a cold, cruel expression. The nobleman reveals that Allen killed his younger brother in battle, leaving Leila in complete shock. Sir Stanley points an accusing finger at Allen, claiming he also killed his nephew during the war.
Overwhelmed by the accusations, Leila stares blankly as she struggles to process the horrific news.
The gray-haired man dismisses Leila's condolences with a sneer, refusing to hear her words of sympathy. Sir Stanley berates Allen for killing his nephew and then daring to marry a professional healer.
He demands to know why Allen didn't lift the curse before his nephew was killed.
Allen bows his head in a deep apology, but the gray-haired man remains entirely unmoved.
Reaching into his jacket, Sir Stanley prepares to show a physical reminder of his family's loss.
Sir Stanley presents a decorative rosette, claiming it is the only thing that returned in his nephew's place.
Grief-stricken, the nobleman holds up the medal as proof of his nephew's final victory in death.
Upon seeing the medal, Leila and Allen react with horror as Allen experiences a sudden, sharp pain. Panicked, Leila calls out to Allen as he clutches his head in a state of visible distress.
Realizing the curse is activating, Leila begs Allen to look at her and stay focused on her voice.
Losing control, Allen violently shoves Leila away, causing her to fall hard onto the palace floor.
Leila lies on the ground in a state of shock, unable to stop Allen's sudden transformation.
Allen screams in agony as the dark power of the curse begins to overwhelm his senses completely. The nephew's rosette lies forgotten on the floor as the situation at the palace turns chaotic.
Driven by the curse, Allen grabs Sir Stanley by the throat and lifts him off the ground.
The gray-haired nobleman watches in terror, shouting that the monster Marquess has finally lost his mind.
Panic erupts among the guests as they flee from the room to escape Allen's violent outburst.
Allen roars as the curse takes over, while Leila desperately tries to move her paralyzed legs. Leila watches in horror as Allen continues to strangle Sir Stanley, realizing she must stop him. Stanley fears for his life while a maddened Allen laughs and tells him he should die.
A mysterious woman with long orange hair suddenly intervenes, grabbing Allen as he is about to kill.
Allen is confused by the newcomer's touch, even as she cold-bloodedly threatens to kill him next. To Leila's utter disbelief, the mysterious woman pulls Allen into a kiss amidst a shower of petals. Allen releases his grip on Sir Stanley as the woman continues her unexpected and intimate intervention.
Struggling to breathe, Sir Stanley realizes that the claims about Allen being healed were a lie.
The woman licks her lips with a predatory smile, thanking Allen for the delicious meal.
Allen's eyes reflect his internal chaos and confusion as the influence of the woman takes hold. Allen collapses toward the floor in pain while Leila watches the scene with a terrified expression.
Leila gasps in shock, her gaze fixed on the mysterious woman who just kissed her husband.
The orange-haired woman chuckles softly, leading a stunned Leila to wonder if she is also a healer. Camila mocks Leila's inability to treat her own husband's curse in the palace hall.
The off-screen countess declares that Leila should have been the one taking care of Allen's condition.
Leila internally agrees, feeling guilty for not being the one to manage the Marquess's curse.
Camila sighs and questions if Leila can even handle the responsibilities of being a Marchioness.
Introducing herself as Countess Camila Oscom, she offers her future services if Leila fails.
Camila flirtatiously compliments Lord Stanley's looks and suggests she might reach out to him later.
The crowd gossips about Camilla's beauty and her incredible, immediate success in healing the curse.
Other nobles glare at the Stanley couple, accusing them of lying about the curse's initial cure. Rumors spread that Leila is a useless, purely ornamental wife who couldn't help her husband. Leila pulls Allen close and suggests that they leave the palace and return home immediately.
Allen looks down in shame, attempting to apologize to his wife for the public humiliation. Leila gently stops his apology and insists that they depart from the hostile palace environment.
Leila's expression remains deeply troubled as she reflects on the events of the evening. The memory of Camilla's kiss with Allen haunts Leila, making her question her own position.
Leila feels a crushing lack of confidence in her abilities to protect or heal her husband. The couple stands alone in the vast hall, dwarfed by the weight of the nobility's judgment.
At the estate, Ada sighs over the sudden influx of letters as public opinion shifts back.
Leila views the hateful letters and feels the sting of being labeled a decorative, deceptive wife. Leila walks through the quiet hallways of the estate, her mind heavy with recent palace scandals.
She reaches out to pick up a discarded piece of paper from the polished manor floor.
Leila is horrified to find a cruel drawing labeling her the wife of a cursed monster. She crushes the insulting paper in her fist, regretting her inability to stop the public backlash. Tears well in Leila's eyes as she silently apologizes to Allen for her perceived failures. Narration reveals that news of the new healer, Camila Ascom, is spreading rapidly through the kingdom.
Camila stands in a field of light, basking in the newfound attention of the entire nobility.
Camila performs a healing, her radiant power drawing awe from those witnessing the display of skill.
She captures the hearts of the common people and nobles alike with her beauty and dedication. In a dim room, Camila sits on a bed after a suggestive healing session with a man. The man expresses relief as his pain vanishes, looking up at Camila with profound, wide-eyed gratitude.
Camila smiles sweetly, claiming she is happy to have provided help to those in desperate need.
Narration explains Camila's sacrifice, spending nights with patients in exchange for her healing powers. People continue to praise Camila's bravery while she maintains a facade of pure, selfless devotion.
A crowd of persistent visitors gathers at Camila's door, eager to meet the celebrated new healer.
Camila receives visitors coming face-to-face with Toby Ferry and his brother in her manor. She graciously invites the men to stand, acknowledging their former status as fellow counts.
Toby Ferry and his brother express their gratitude for her willingness to see them despite everything.
Camila reveals she knows they are from the Ferry household, Leila's former family of origin.
She admits to having a keen interest in scandals and remembers the specific details of theirs. Camila brings up the fact that they lost their titles for their cruel abuse of Leila. The brothers react with visible irritation, their faces contorting as their dark past is mentioned.
Toby Ferry questions why a woman of Camila's influence would want them at her doorstep.
A tense silence hangs in the air as the brothers wait for Camila to reveal her true motives.
Toby declares their desire to destroy Leila's happiness and asks Camila to help break her.
Camila smiles maliciously amidst blooming flowers, asking what role they want her to play in the plot. During a quiet dinner, Allen and Leila eat in a strained silence that fills the dining room. Leila stares at her plate, unable to look Allen in the eye while Camila's kiss haunts her.
Allen notices her distress and asks if something is wrong, sensing the distance between them growing.
Leila apologizes for worrying him, trying to convince herself that Allen is innocent of any wrongdoing.
Allen looks at her with concern, asking why she refuses to look at him during their meal.
Allen stabs his food with a fork, frustrated by the avoidance Leila has shown since the palace. Leila feels overwhelmed by guilt as she internally apologizes to Allen for her cold and distant behavior. Allen notices his wife's avoidance and asks why she continues to refuse to look at him directly.
Leila denies any issues while secretly scolding herself for being unable to control her mounting emotional distress.
Abruptly ending the meal, she excuses herself with a lie about wanting to work on her knitting.
Allen watches in silence as his wife distances herself further, leaving him alone in the dining room.
He calls out her name softly, his expression filled with concern over her sudden and cold departure. Leila acknowledges that her behavior is unfair to Allen but feels unable to bridge the emotional gap. A sudden wave of physical distress washes over her as she struggles to remain standing in the hall. She loses her balance and clutches the doorframe, her vision blurring as her body begins to fail. Allen rushes toward her after noticing her instability, reaching out to catch her before she can fall. Despite her obvious physical weakness, she desperately tells him to stay away and leave her alone. Allen is stunned by her rejection, his eyes wide with fear as he sees her condition worsening.
Her mind acknowledges the irrationality of her distance, but her heart remains heavy with deep, unresolved pain.
She finally collapses to the floor, her body giving in to the stress and a rising fever. Panicked, Allen screams for Ada to bring medical help immediately while he stays by his wife's side. He hovers over her unconscious form in the hallway, desperate for any sign of her recovery. Allen feels completely helpless as he gazes at Leila, wondering how to fix the rift between them. A dark, oppressive energy looms over the estate as the night deepens during the medical emergency. Leila's eyes begin to flutter open as she enters a strange, dreamlike state while still unconscious. She finds herself alone in a mysterious, glowing purple void, unsure of where she is or why. A sudden realization or sight causes her to gasp as she looks into the distance of the void.
She spots a familiar figure standing with his back turned toward her in the middle of the darkness.
Seeing the figure, she tentatively calls out for Allen, confused by his presence in this surreal space. She is horrified to see Allen holding Camila in a tight embrace, confirming her deepest, darkest insecurities. She cries out his name in desperation, watching the heartbreaking scene unfold before her dreaming eyes. Camila smirks maliciously while leaning in closer to Allen, mocking Leila with her intimate and suggestive actions.
Camila addresses her directly within the dream, her tone dripping with a sense of condescension and triumph.
The woman cruelly questions Leila's worthiness and her ability to remain by the side of the Marquess.
Leila is frozen in shock, the biting words of the other woman echoing through her subconscious mind.
The dream version of Allen points out her failures, reminding her that his curse remains entirely unbroken.
Camila offers a mockingly helpful suggestion as she leads Allen away into the surrounding oppressive darkness. Overwhelmed by the vision, Leila struggles to speak as the nightmare reaches its absolute emotional peak. She reaches out a trembling hand, calling for her husband one last time before he disappears completely. She bolts upright with a start, her heart racing as she finally breaks free from the nightmare.
Panting and disoriented, she finds herself back in her bedroom as the morning sun filters in.
She touches her own skin, trying to convince herself that the painful events were only a dream.
She winces in pain, feeling the lingering physical and emotional weight of the haunting, vivid vision.
Ada enters the room, expressing immense relief at seeing her mistress finally awake after her collapse.
Leila asks for an explanation of her current state while Ada breathes a heavy sigh of relief.
Ada explains that a severe fever caused her to pass out, much to Leila's lingering confusion.
The maid reveals that Leila has been unconscious and struggling through a fever for 3 whole days.
Leila realizes that her intense nightmares were likely the reason for her distressed sounds during her sleep.
Ada notes that the fever hasn't fully broken yet, her face etched with a deep, lingering concern.
Ada urges her to rest and prepares to inform the Marquess of her awakening immediately.
Leila stops the maid, pleading to be left alone because she cannot face Allen just yet.
Confused by the sudden change, Ada wonders what could have caused a rift in their relationship.
Leila remains silent, unable to explain the complex mix of jealousy and insecurity fueled by her dreams.
Despite Ada's encouragement to reconcile, Leila insists she is simply not ready to speak with her husband.
Recognizing her mistress's distress, Ada kindly agrees to keep her awakening a secret from Allen for now.
Leila offers a faint, grateful smile, relieved that she has a moment to process her feelings privately.
Leila remains asleep in her grand bed as the bright morning light fills the quiet room. Her eyes slowly open, greeted by the sight of glowing branches and ethereal white butterflies overhead.
Leila questions if she truly has any right to remain by Allen's side after recent events.
Outside the room, Ada informs the Marquess that Leila still does not wish to see him. Allen stands in the hallway, his posture tense as he receives the news of his wife's avoidance.
He reacts with a somber, understanding look, though the distance clearly weighs heavily on his mind.
Ada expresses her deep concern, wondering what could have caused such a rift between the couple.
Allen admits to his own uncertainty, unsure of why Leila has suddenly distanced herself from him.
Despite the maid's offer to help, Allen insists that he only wants to be healed by Leila.
Ada urges him to make up with her mistress, noting that Allen is aware of the situation.
In the shadows, Allen observes the alarming rate at which his curse has begun to spread again.
He wonders if his intense longing for Leila is accidentally fueling the progression of his dark affliction. Allen reaches out, silently pleading for Leila to recover and return to his side very soon. He expresses a desperate wish to see her smile again as he waits outside her closed door. A hand reaches toward the ceiling, capturing a lingering memory of the palace's grand glowing lights. Leila reflects on her failure to stop Allen's aggressive behavior during their time at the palace. She recalls her inability to act while Allen confronted another man, feeling useless in her role.
The traumatic memory of Camila kissing Allen resurfaces, leaving Leila feeling utterly paralyzed by her own insecurities.
She lets her hand drop onto the bed, sinking further into a state of deep emotional exhaustion.
Leila wonders if a woman of Camila's status and power would be a more suitable partner.
Her gaze is filled with sorrow as she considers her own perceived worthlessness compared to other nobles.
She imagines Camila and Allen as a perfect match, possessing the beauty and rank she lacks.
Overwhelmed by these painful thoughts, Leila buries her face in her pillow with a frustrated sound.
She believes that loving him means stepping back, yet the prospect brings her to silent tears.
Later, Leila sits up in bed to consume a small meal under Ada's watchful, concerned gaze.
Leila thanks the maid for the meal as she sets aside her tray, her appetite barely returned.
Ada notes the untouched food, but Leila explains that eating more would only make her feel sick. The maid sighs, confused by the doctor's report that Leila is not suffering from a physical illness.
Leila knows her condition is purely emotional, the result of being completely worn out by her thoughts.
She clenches the bedding tightly, struggling with her inability to talk to Allen about her mounting fears.
A sudden knock at the bedroom door interrupts her spiraling thoughts, catching her by complete surprise.
Allen asks for permission to enter, his voice causing Leila's heart to race with sudden, intense anxiety.
Recognizing she cannot hide forever, Leila decides she must finally face her husband and speak with him.
She invites him in, her expression reflecting a mix of apprehension and the necessity of their confrontation.
The door clicks open as Allen finally steps into the room after 3 days of total isolation. Allen softly calls out her name, his eyes filled with immense relief at seeing her finally awake. He approaches her bedside while Ada stands nearby, the air thick with tension and unspoken words.
Leila attempts to downplay her sickness, claiming she only has a light fever to reassure him.
Allen notices her odd behavior and asks what she finds funny about their current awkward situation.
He smiles warmly, expressing how much he has missed being able to talk to her face to face.
Leila gasps as she looks closely at his face, horrified by what she sees on his skin.
She realizes with terror that the curse has progressed significantly while she was distancing herself from him.
Clenching her hands, she blames herself for the rapid spread of the dark markings across his body.
Tears stream down her face as she assumes full responsibility for the dangerous advancement of his curse.
Allen looks back at her, unaware of the specific reason for her sudden and intense emotional outburst.
He informs her about a letter from Countess Camila Ascom, who wishes to meet with both of them.
Leila is struck with shock at the mention of the woman who haunts her recent, painful memories. She insists they must go see her, claiming it is necessary for Allen's well-being and his future. Allen is bewildered by her change in attitude, questioning why she wants to engage with the Countess.
Leila argues that Camilla's status and healing prowess are connections that Allen cannot afford to lose.
Allen gazes intensely at Leila, his face still marred by the rapidly spreading dark curse.
Allen insists he will only accept Leila's healing and questions her sudden change in heart.
Leila looks at him with a pained expression, realizing her fears are becoming a reality. Believing she is unfit to stay, Leila stares at the curse worsening on Allen's hand.
Allen sits on the edge of the bed and calls out to his wife with concern.
Leila argues that Allen needs more capable healers and should not rely on her alone.
She suggests seeking help from powerful nobles like Countess Ascom instead of someone as powerless as herself.
Allen refuses to see the Countess, declaring that he will have no one heal him but Leila.
Leila counters that they must at least thank the woman who stopped his rampage at the palace.
She insists they should have reached out to Countess Ascom themselves to seek her specialized assistance.
Leila remains adamant that meeting with the Countess is the only way to save him from death.
Allen stares at her in silence, his expression clouded by deep sorrow and growing frustration.
He finally agrees to send a reply as Leila thanks him, then begins to leave the bed.
Allen warns her that while he is replying, he is absolutely not changing his mind about her.
Ada enters the room with a tray as Leila turns to see why the maid is returned.
Ada calls to her mistress, and Leila asks the maid what has brought her back so soon.
Ada suggests that Lord Allen is simply not very skilled at expressing how he truly feels inside.
Leila admits she knows he loves her, but her internal monologue begins to shift toward despair.
She concludes that her deep love for Allen is the exact reason she can no longer stay. Countess Camila Ascom arrives at the estate, curtsying as she thanks the couple for their invitation. Leila welcomes the Countess with a bright, welcoming smile and invites her to make herself comfortable.
Allen remains silent while Leila glances toward him, the tension in the room palpable and heavy.
Allen offers a formal apology for the delay and thanks the Countess for visiting them today. Camila requests they drop all formalities and asks Allen to address her by her first name.
Leila agrees with a friendly smile, suggesting they all speak casually with Lady Camila from now on.
Camila smiles back, graciously accepting Leila's offer to move past the rigid social etiquette of nobility. The three sit together in the parlor as Leila invites their guests to take a seat.
Camila settles in and states she will proceed directly to the purpose of her requested meeting.
Camila shocks the couple by boldly asking Allen to take her as his new wife.
Leila is frozen in utter disbelief, her eyes wide as the Countess makes her brazen proposal.
Allen stares at Camila with a grim and stunned expression after hearing her outrageous demand.
Camila mocks Leila's surprise, suggesting that deep down, Leila already knew this confrontation was coming eventually.
She reminds Leila of her failure at the palace, claiming she is incapable of protecting the Marquess.
Leila bows her head in shame, crushed by the biting truth of the Countess's cruel words. Camila boasts about her superior healing power while noting that Leila's family has lost all standing. A sinister, inverted image reflects the Countess's malicious intent to replace Leila and seize her status.
Camila declares herself more worthy of the Stanley name since Leila has lost her rank and heritage.
Leila remains silent, her face shadowed by her hair as she absorbs the Countess's painful insults.
Clenching her skirt, Leila mentally agrees that her own weak healing is not enough to save Allen.
Allen cuts through the tension with a blunt and immediate refusal of Camila's marriage proposal.
Camila presses him, asking if he still refuses despite knowing his wife cannot cure his condition.
Allen demands to know what evidence Camila has that Leila's healing is insufficient for his curse. Camila suggests a night spent together would prove her superior power, her gaze filled with arrogance. Allen's eyes burn with cold fury as he issues a final, sharp rejection to the Countess.
Camila laughs off his anger, noting that his curse is too severe for a single healer.
Leila despairs, believing Allen's devotion to her is the only thing preventing him from being saved. She becomes convinced that her presence is causing his unhappiness and she must leave for good.
Driven by her love, Leila decides the only way to save him is to let him go.
Leila begins to weep silently, prompting a worried Allen to reach out and call her name.
Leila looks up and forces a heartbreaking smile, hiding the true depth of her internal suffering.
Leila offers a sad smile while suggesting that she and Allen should go their separate ways.
Leila remains resolute in her decision, calmly proposing that they finally part from one another.
Allen reacts with shock and outrage, slamming his hand down as he questions her sudden proposal. Leila looks down in shame, admitting that her healing magic is significantly weaker than Lady Camilla's power.
An abstract swirl of energy illustrates how healers can theoretically combine their powers to achieve greater results.
Leila yields to Camilla's superior strength, but Allen glares at the Countess and demands her silence.
Lady Camila chuckles mockingly, clearly enjoying the chaos and tension her presence has caused between them.
Allen rejects Camilla's offer, declaring that his wife's power is irrelevant because he only wants Leila.
Leila clenches her arms and shouts in frustration, claiming she is unable to stop Allen's actions.
Camila smiles maliciously at Leila, agreeing that the pink-haired woman was indeed unable to restrain her husband.
Allen's eyes burn with cold fury as he shouts at Camila to shut her mouth immediately.
Lady Camila continues to chuckle behind her hand, completely unfazed by Allen's aggressive and threatening behavior.
Leila's voice breaks as she begs Allen to divorce her for the sake of his survival.
Allen grabs Leila by the shoulders and firmly declares that he will never agree to a divorce.
Turning away from the heated argument, Camila casually remarks on the beauty of the estate's garden.
Camila asks for permission to tour the garden to give the couple privacy for their ongoing conversation.
Allen glares intensely at the Countess, his face marred by the advancing curse as he ignores her.
Ada bows respectfully as the orange-haired Countess exits the room to explore the estate grounds.
Tears stream down Leila's face as she insists that only Camila has the power to save him.
Allen holds his trembling wife, begging her to calm down as she continues to spiral into despair.
Standing tall, Allen tries to reason with his wife and make her understand his unwavering devotion.
Leila looks up at her husband with wide, tearful eyes as he holds her shoulders during their confrontation.
A close-up of Leila's face reveals the deep emotional pain and conflict she is currently experiencing.
Leila pulls away from her husband's touch, stating her intention to return to her bedroom alone.
As she walks away, Leila instructs Allen to stay and speak further with Lady Camila instead.
Leila pauses, her expression pained as she repeats her belief that she cannot heal his dark curse.
Allen watches in stunned silence as Leila walks out of the room, leaving him completely alone.
Allen stares at the empty doorway, softly calling his wife's name in a state of utter disbelief.
Alone in her room, Leila hugs herself tightly while gazing out the window at the gardens.
Leila reflects on her lack of strength compared to the powerful and confident Lady Camila Oskam.
She wonders if she would ever be capable of protecting Allen once society begins to shun him.
Watching Camila from the window, Leila notes the Countess's absolute confidence and high social standing. Leila concludes that Allen requires both powerful healing and the decisiveness she feels she lacks herself. She gazes at her hands, convinced she lacks the power necessary to protect her husband from ruin.
Leila mentally admits that she is lost to Lady Camila in every meaningful aspect of their rivalry.
In the garden, Camilla's boot ruthlessly crushes a delicate flower into the dirt with hidden malice.
Lady Camila stands amidst the greenery, maintaining a facade of grace while humming a pleasant tune.
Camila whistles to attract a white bird, which descends from the sky and lands on her hand. Using both hands, the Countess carefully ties a small secret message to the bird's thin leg.
Camila releases the bird into the sky as Ada watches her suspicious behavior from a safe distance.
The Countess turns her attention to a bush of roses, admiring the flowers with a predatory gaze. Camila crushes a rosebud in her hand, comparing the dying flower to her plan for Lady Stanley.
From her high window, Leila remains oblivious to the cruelty unfolding in the garden below her. Camila stands in the sunlit field as Allen finally approaches her to continue their interrupted meeting.
Allen calls out to the Countess, his expression stern as he finds her in the estate gardens.
Camila smiles and asks Allen what is wrong as he arrives at her side, visibly out of breath. Allen demands to know what she was doing, but Camila coyly claims she did nothing at all.
Allen looks down at the grass, noticing the scattered petals of the flower Camila recently destroyed.
He glares at the Countess, noting that she clearly has no actual love for the garden's flowers.
Camila laughs mockingly at his observation, expressing surprise that Allen would care about such trivial things.
Allen asks the Countess what she is doing outside, and she claims she is doing nothing.
Allen tells Camila his business is none of hers, but she notes she was present regardless. Allen stares ahead with a grim expression, the curse marks visible beneath his dark mask.
Camila offers a small, mocking laugh while keeping her eyes closed in a false display of joy.
Camila touches Allen's shoulder and promises to return soon, expressing hope for a positive response later.
Sunlight filters through a large window as the scene shifts to the interior of the manor.
Allen tells Camila to stop messing around, but she claims she isn't and finds him unentertaining. Camila spins away with a smile as Allen watches her leave from a distance in the garden.
Allen glances toward the manor and softly speaks his wife's name as he remains standing alone.
Leila grips the curtains tightly while looking out the window, her expression filled with quiet sorrow. Leila remembers seeing them kiss again, concluding it was not done simply to stop the curse. She watches from the window as Allen and Camila stand together under the vast starry sky. Tears fall from Leila's eyes as she calls out her husband's name in a silent, heartbroken sob. Leila believes Allen's heart no longer belongs to her and feels that knowing this is enough.
She concludes that there is no longer a place for her to stay within the Stanley house.
Leila stands alone in the shadows of her room, her posture slumped in a state of defeat. Leila admits her love for Allen is the exact reason she has decided she must leave him. The bedroom stands empty and silent, bathed in a cold blue light as the night passes.
Allen pushes the door open and announces his arrival, expecting to find Leila waiting for him.
Allen's eye widens in sudden shock as he notices the room is completely devoid of life.
The grand bedroom is abandoned, with the bed neatly made and no sign of Leila anywhere.
Allen approaches a table and picks up a discarded piece of paper with a trembling, cursed hand.
The note left behind by Leila bluntly instructs Allen to go ahead with their planned divorce.
Allen crushes the divorce note in his fist, his face shadowed by a mixture of rage and grief.
A desperate cry for Leila echoes through the darkness as Allen realizes she is truly gone.
The scene shifts to a bright, clear blue sky filled with shimmering light and soft clouds.
A white messenger bird flies through the air, carrying a secret message tied to its leg.
The bird descends toward a bustling town, heading for a specific building among the many houses.
A blonde man catches the bird while his companion with a monocle watches the bird's arrival. The man with the monocle asks for his friend's thoughts, who remarks that the Countess is outstanding.
A dark purple gradient illustrates the passage of time as evening begins to settle over the capital.
Walking through the streets at sunset, Leila ignores the suspicious and judgmental glares of the townspeople.
Leila reflects on her aimless wandering, having left the manor for Allen's sake, despite having nowhere else.
She gazes at her reflection, considering selling the expensive jewelry Allen once gifted her for some money.
Clenching her hand over the gem, Leila realizes she cannot bring herself to pawn Allen's precious gifts. Leila recalls a happy memory where Allen gave her jewelry specifically to see her favorite color smile.
The memory continues with Leila throwing her arms around Allen in a joyful and loving embrace. Back in the present, Leila trembles as she holds the jewelry, her heart still aching for Allen. A single tear falls onto the green gemstone as Leila struggles to maintain her resolve to leave. She admits that even if divorce makes Allen happier, she still loves him with all her heart.
Leila notes she left the manor without a word to reach this point in the capital city.
Wiping her eyes, she acknowledges that officializing the divorce requires her to eventually sign the necessary documents. She fears that returning to Allen to sign the papers will make her want to stay forever.
Leila ponders if there is a way to finalize the divorce without having to sign any documents.
Remembering the infirmary, she realizes taking refuge at the church allows the divorce to proceed without signatures.
A golden emblem of a snake coiled around a staff represents the healing power of the church.
Leila thinks of her stepsister, Emma, who is currently serving among the healers at the city infirmary.
3 men corner Leila in an alley, mockingly asking if she is lost and offering their guidance.
Leila feels a sense of dread, wondering if she can trust the men despite not knowing the way.
Seeing their predatory grins, Leila concludes she cannot ask them for help without being taken advantage of.
Leila attempts to dismiss the man, insisting she is fine and knows her way.
The man roughly grabs Leila's arm, prompting her to demand an explanation for his actions.
He ignores her protests and drags her along, claiming she should accept a man's help.
A second man joins in, and they both force Leila to walk along with them.
Leila begs for release as the men's dark intentions of pawning her belongings are revealed.
One man leers at Leila, suggesting they take advantage of her before moving on.
As Leila cries out for help, a commanding voice suddenly orders the men to stop. Recognizing the voice, Leila gasps in shock as she looks toward her unexpected savior.
An unseen speaker comments on Leila's appearance as she stands cornered in the dark alley.
Daryl and Toby are revealed, standing together with calm and somewhat mocking expressions.
Leila is stunned to see Daryl and Toby, asking why they are in the capital.
Toby tosses a gold coin, claiming he couldn't possibly abandon his distressed stepsister. Lured by the bribe, one of the thugs eagerly reaches for the falling gold coin.
Toby insults Leila's worth while the thugs greedily demand more money for their trouble.
Toby reaches toward the lead thug, ominously suggesting he has a different way to pay.
Toby uses his cursed power to inflict agony on the thug, causing him to collapse.
Daryl stares down the remaining men, mockingly asking if they want a taste of power.
The terrified thugs flee into the night as Leila watches them dash away in fear. Daryl and Toby invite a confused Leila to their home rather than talking in public.
Leila stands frozen, repeating their mention of a house in a state of utter disbelief.
Lost in thought, Leila continues to process the strange invitation from her former tormentors. Daryl explains their current living situation, noting their household was stripped of its noble title.
Leila questions them about the whereabouts of their father after hearing of their family's downfall.
Daryl reveals their father is hospitalized under Emma's care after collapsing from extreme anxiety.
Leila feels conflicted, grieving their misfortune even though they previously treated her with such cruelty.
Toby pulls Leila along, reminding her that she has nowhere else to go but with them. Toby warns Leila that her fine clothes make her a target for strangers with bad intentions.
The trio arrives at a modest building as the city night settles around them.
Leila is shoved onto a bed inside a simple room, crying out in surprise and fear.
Daryl admits the place is shabby, explaining this is the remains of the Count Ferry household.
Daryl suddenly grabs Leila's hair, venomously asking who she thinks is responsible for their ruin.
He slams her onto the bed, screaming that their current suffering is entirely her fault.
Daryl blames Leila for marrying the Marquess and causing the loss of their family's healing powers.
He rages that she influenced Emma's mistakes, forcing their family to live like common dogs.
Daryl demands that Leila grovel and apologize for destroying their lives while he continues his assault.
Toby intervenes, telling Daryl to be calm since their former status cannot be restored anyway.
Daryl leaves Leila on the bed and Toby suggests they celebrate their reunion with wine. Toby grabs a bottle, urging Daryl to put aside his anger and have a drink. Pouring the wine, Toby claims this moment marks the start of a bright new future.
Toby passes a glass of red wine to Daryl, who takes it with a frown.
Daryl drinks the wine but suddenly reacts with shock as something goes terribly wrong.
Daryl collapses as the glass shatters, leaving a terrified Leila to watch from the bed.
Leila gasps in horror, flinching as she witnesses Daryl's sudden and violent collapse.
Toby smiles broadly, remarking that they finally have the peace and quiet he desired.
Leila's eyes widen in terror as she begins to realize Toby's true and sinister nature.
Scuttling away, Leila asks Toby what he did to Daryl in a voice shaking with fear.
Toby dismisses Daryl's previous abuse, questioning why Leila would care about a man who hurt her.
Toby reveals he drugged Daryl to ensure they could speak privately without any further interruptions. Chills run down Leila's spine as she realizes she is now completely alone with Toby.
Toby pulls Leila toward him, crudely asking how many times she slept with the monster Marquess.
While Leila reflects on her secret longing for Sir Allen, Toby approaches her during her garden chores.
Toby looms over the weeding Leila, noting that he has been targeting her more frequently of late.
Toby mockingly suggests she quit her current life and offers to make her his mistress instead.
Leila stares in utter confusion, completely unable to comprehend the offensive proposition Toby just made.
Toby suddenly shoves Leila backward as she realizes the true malicious intent behind his arrival.
Toby pins her down, claiming it's a waste for her to be a maid and demanding her.
Leila begs him to stop as Toby prepares to cast a charm spell to force her affection.
Refusing to submit, Leila's heart glows with a divine light as she resists his magical assault. A blinding explosion of magic erupts as Leila declares her heart belongs only to Sir Allen.
Toby recoils in pain and shock, shielding his face from the intense brilliance of Leila's power.
The young man is completely overwhelmed by the flash, unable to understand what just happened. Leila stands alone in the garden, stunned by the mysterious light that caused Toby's spell to fail.
Noticing a vision of Allen, Leila feels relieved that her love for him remains perfectly intact.
Daryl and Emma rush toward the garden after sensing the massive wave of magic emanating from there.
Toby points an accusing finger at Leila, lying that she was the one who tried to seduce him.
Daryl aggressively grabs Leila, accusing her of using her body because she lacks any magical abilities.
Toby continues the lie by claiming Leila offered herself to him as she tearfully denies everything.
Emma mocks her sister, suggesting she become a prostitute since she allows the boys such liberties. Toby roughly shoves Leila back to the ground, continuing the physical and verbal abuse in the garden.
Emma insults Leila for being talentless, claiming her lack of magic makes her utterly useless to them.
The siblings stand together and laugh at Leila's humiliation as they walk away from the garden.
Leila laments her lack of power but finds strength in the love she treasures for Sir Allen. Despite the cruelty she faces, Leila smiles as she holds on to the feelings in her heart. Leila remains curious about the mysterious light that protected her during the confrontation with Toby.
One afternoon, the entire Ferry family gathers around the dining table for a tense, formal meal.
Her father mentions a marriage proposal, shocking Leila as she waits on them during the dinner.
Her father explains that a Marquess requested her hand and commands her to accept without question.
Emma mockingly reveals that the suitor is known as the ugly and terrifying monster Marquess.
Emma laughs at the perfect match, calling Leila shabby while Leila's world begins to crumble.
A dark silhouette represents the mysterious monster Marquess, whose reputation strikes fear into the community.
The brothers mock her potential marriage, hoping she can at least serve as a plaything for him.
Leila prepares for her wedding day, feeling heartbroken at the thought of forgetting her true love.
Her father demands total obedience to her new husband as Leila accepts her first love's end.
A masked nobleman kneels before Leila, who is stunned to realize the Marquess is Sir Allen.
Allen confesses his long-held desire to see her, revealing his identity behind the mask and title.
Leila weeps with relief as Allen swears on his life to make her truly happy. Leila accepts his hand, not caring if it is pity as long as she stays with him.
Emma and Daryl mock the couple as a hideous pair while Allen stands tall and silent.
Allen's intense, scarred gaze terrifies Emma and the brothers, silencing their cruel and petty laughter. Allen gently takes Leila's hand, signaling that it is finally time for her to leave this house.
Allen carries Leila in his arms and she feels as if she is living in a dream.
Allen looks forward solemnly, his scarred face visible as Leila wonders if this marriage is an apology.
Leila smiles with pure joy, resolving to always love the man who finally came for her.
Leila looks out at the changing scenery as they depart the Ferry residence for a new life.
The couple arrives at a massive, ornate mansion that stands as a symbol of Allen's high status.
Leila looks down pensively, reflecting on the sudden and dramatic shift in her life's journey.
The carriage enters the grand estate, revealing a sprawling courtyard and beautifully maintained grounds.
A line of maids welcomes the couple home as Allen leads Leila into his grand residence. Leila gasps in awe at the luxurious and shining interior of her new home's grand hall.
Allen encourages Leila to make herself at home, officially welcoming her to her new life.
Toby leans in close, mockingly questioning Leila about her nightly efforts to heal Allen's curse.
Leila tries to deny his claims, but Toby leeringly asks where else the Marquess kissed her.
Toby continues his invasive interrogation, crudely questioning if Allen touched her in more private places.
Distressed and blushing, Leila thinks she would much rather be yelled at than endure such questions. Leila attempts to flee from the room but ends up tripping over her own dress. Toby grins maliciously as he slams Leila onto the bed, pinning her down with his weight. Leila screams in terror, demanding that Toby get off her as he looms over her. Toby mentions the impending divorce, leaving a stunned Leila to wonder how he learned of it. Toby claims Allen has fallen for another woman, which a tearful Leila desperately tries to deny.
Toby mockingly points out that Leila is homeless now that Allen has replaced her with someone else.
Toby suggests Allen is currently bringing a new woman home while showing a vision of Camila. Leila weeps, believing Camila is a far superior healer and is much better suited to protect Allen. Looking toward a grand building, Leila concludes she has no place to return to at the mansion.
A close-up shows Leila's hand trembling with grief as she clenches the fabric of her dress.
Toby watches her with a cold, predatory smile as he prepares to reveal his true intentions.
Toby declares that from this moment forward, Leila will serve as their slave.
Leia is struck with utter disbelief at the thought of being reduced to a mere slave.
Toby reveals his plan to sell Leila to the neighboring kingdom as a slave after their interaction.
He notes that healers command high prices, regardless of whether they are sold to an enemy nation.
Toby explains that her healing services will translate into wealth for him, acting as her new master.
A text panel explains that Leila's future will be spent healing others as a lifelong slave.
Toby mocks her distress, while Leila asks how he could possibly commit such a cruel betrayal.
Toby suggests her value would increase if she slept with another ability user like himself first.
Leila begs her brother-in-law to stop as he roughly begins to undo the buttons of her dress.
Toby promises to make her feel so good that she will be unable to speak at all.
Toby claims he can handle women better than Allen and promises to prove his superiority soon.
Toby laughs at her belief in love despite the fact that Allen has allegedly discarded her.
Leila thinks of her husband, admitting that even in this terrifying moment, her love remains unchanged.
Toby is suddenly distracted by a noise at the door, reacting with a look of annoyance.
The window stands silent as the perspective shifts to the entrance where someone has arrived.
Toby complains that the slave buyers have arrived far too early for their scheduled meeting. Toby grumbles about the buyers' lack of patience and decides to go make them wait outside. Leila realizes she would rather jump out the window than live as a slave to her in-laws.
Approaching the window, Leila apologizes to Allen and silently prays for his future happiness. Toby opens the door to confront the visitors, assuming they are the buyers he was expecting. Toby's expression shifts to pure shock as he recognizes the man standing at the threshold. Allen Stanley stands in the doorway, his masked face covered in grime and his expression murderous.
Allen enters the room with a cold, silent fury, ignoring the blonde man standing before him.
A profile of the masked Marquess shows his intense focus on Leila as he takes control.
Leila gasps her husband's name, stunned to see that he has actually come to save her. Allen's eyes glow with a fierce light as he prepares to confront Leila's tormentor.
Toby attempts to lie, claiming that Allen's wife is not there and only his sister-in-law remains.
Allen firmly rejects the idea of their separation, stating that their divorce is not yet official.
Allen looks directly at Leila and declares with absolute certainty that she is still his wife. Leila begins to mention the loss of her healing powers, looking down in shame and sorrow.
Allen interrupts her, asking his wife if she has forgotten the history of their relationship.
Allen reminds Leila that he proposed to her before he was even aware of her healing abilities.
Leila is speechless, her hand over her mouth as she processes the depth of Allen's devotion.
Allen looks at her with a calm, sincere expression, reaffirming his feelings for her.
Allen invites Leila to return home, stating that her powers were never a condition for his love.
Leila gazes at her husband with wide, tearful eyes as she processes his unwavering devotion.
Overwhelmed with relief, Leila cries out Allen's name while throwing herself into his protective embrace. Toby stands frozen in the background, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and terror.
In a desperate rage, Toby attempts to strike Allen with a wine bottle while Leila screams.
Allen swiftly reacts to the threat, delivering a powerful kick to neutralize his attacker's momentum. Toby stumbles backward from the blow as Allen keeps a firm, protective hold on his wife.
Allen catches the attacker's arm mid-swing, while Toby expresses disbelief that the couple is still together. A group of soldiers enters the room, led by a commander who formally addresses the Marquess.
Pointing to the kidnappers, Allen orders the soldiers to take Toby and Daryl into custody immediately.
As the soldiers restrain him, Toby demands to know how the Marquess managed to find them.
The masked Marquess looks down with cold indifference, revealing that he acted upon a secret tip. Toby reacts with utter disbelief, realizing that someone has betrayed their hidden location to the Marquess.
Allen holds Leila close while his men lead the disgraced and defeated brothers away to jail.
Leila remains lost in thought, quietly questioning the identity of the mysterious informant who saved her.
Allen gently comforts his wife, placing a hand on her head as the immediate danger passes. A moment of quiet reflection follows as Leila finally begins to feel safe in Allen's arms. Outside, guards roughly shove Toby into a prison carriage to be transported for his heinous crimes. Watching from the shadows, Camila mockingly thanks the brothers for unknowingly serving her secret agenda.
Camila claims her healing grew stronger by sleeping with ability users before calling the brothers trash.
Camila turns away from the scene, stating that men who exploit women deserve to vanish forever. Watching the couple, Camila thinks that Allen is now hopelessly indebted to her for her assistance. Later that night, Camila reads a letter threatening her uncle's life if she fails her mission. She dismisses the message as a repetitive threat while looking at the cryptic letter. Burdened by her secret life as an operative, Camila lets out a deep, exhausted sigh. Standing by a candle, Camila prepares to destroy the evidence of her ongoing communications with Duca. Camila reveals her identity as a spy for Duca, a kingdom known as their sworn enemy. A fire burns in Camilla's eyes as she reflects on her duty to her home nation.
Camila holds the letter over a candle, watching the flames consume the evidence of her treason.
She explains that her mother was also an undercover operative before being forced into marriage. Her mother infiltrated the country as a civilian and eventually married the prominent Count Askim.
Camila reveals her mother was coerced into spying because Duca was holding her brother hostage.
Even after attaining noble status, Duca commanded them to extract vital information from the royal palace. Camila reveals that a new and deadly directive has been issued to kill Allen Stanley immediately.
Camila stands in the darkness, contemplating the gravity of the assassination order she has been given.
Seeking answers, Camila reaches for a specific book on the high shelf of a dimly lit library.
Various research papers and books are scattered across a desk as Camila continues her secret investigation.
Camila reflects on her heritage, noting that her grandfather was a shaman whose powers skipped her mother.
She sifts through records, noting the rarity of healers being born outside of specific noble bloodlines.
Camila believes her awakening as an acquired healer was a complete genetic fluke while researching Allen's history.
She recalls her mother forcing her to sleep with other healers to strengthen her pathetic innate powers.
A younger Camila calls out to her mother in a memory of her difficult and traumatic past.
Camila screams in protest as her mother forces her into a room with a sinister man.
An oppressive darkness settles over the memory as Camila experiences the total loss of her innocence.
Camila explains that while her powers grew rapidly through exploitation, her heart eventually died within her.
Shifting her focus to medicine, Camila meticulously grinds ingredients to create a specialized and lethal concoction.
With a malicious giggle, Camila finishes her preparation by adding a dangerous and unknown powder. Camila admits that she discovered a natural and terrifying knack for handling various types of poisons.
She admits she actually enjoyed learning about toxins, using her knowledge to kill unsuspecting birds.
Controlling the power of life and death gave Camila a powerful and intoxicating rush of superiority.
Camila reflects on her dark path, admitting that poisoning others was the only time she felt alive.
Camila smirks, noting how easy it is to manipulate nobles into revealing their secrets.
Camila reflects on her past methods of healing and then poisoning victims to extract information.
Camila prides herself on being a spy superior to all others in her field.
Camila gazes out the window, realizing that standard poisons and healing are insufficient to kill Allen.
While planning Allen's demise, Camila learns a rumor that his curse is healing at a rapid pace.
Camila discovers that Allen's new wife, Leila Ferry, is actually the healer responsible for his recovery.
Camila acknowledges that if this continues, Allen will eventually be completely cured of his affliction. Camila resolves to separate Leila and Allen at any cost to achieve her mission. Camila explains that she exploited powerful healers to match Leila's strength and manipulated events to gain trust. Camila views the current situation as her ultimate chance to force the couple into a divorce. Camila mockingly calls her target naive while preparing her writing materials at her desk. Camila dismisses the idea of a loyal healer as a fairy tale while addressing Lady Leila.
Lightning illuminates the dark room as the scene shifts to the couple's private chamber.
Allen and Leila share a quiet, intimate moment together in bed during the stormy night.
Leila observes with concern that the bruise on her husband's face has darkened significantly.
Allen asks what is wrong, and Leila expresses her guilt over being unable to heal him. Leila is distressed to see that the curse has spread further down Allen's arm. Allen tries to reassure his wife, claiming that the worsening condition is only temporary.
Leila laments that her healing is too weak to provide an immediate fix for his long untreated condition.
Leila explains that because they went so long without treatment, his recovery will take considerable time. Allen tells her not to say another word, affirming his absolute belief in Leila's abilities. Allen looks at Leila with a gentle smile, asking her to place her trust in him. Leila stares at her husband in surprise, moved by his unwavering confidence in her. A gentle peace settles over Leila as she processes Allen's comforting words and devotion.
Leila smiles warmly, vowing to trust in the version of Allen that believes in her.
Hugging Allen, Leila muses that trust and love will surely strengthen her dormant healing powers.
Allen pulls his wife closer in an intimate embrace as they share a moment of affection.
The storm passes as the view shifts to the window, signaling a transition in time.
A bright light marks the start of a new chapter in the couple's lives.
Leila visits the garden and sighs at the sight of beautiful flowers being cruelly trampled.
Holding a wilted flower, Leila is haunted by memories of Allen and Camila together.
Leila admits she avoided the garden because it sparked bad memories and feelings of low self-confidence.
The gardener suggests that since the current plants are ruined, it is best to plant fresh ones.
Leila desperately asks if the flower she planted for Allen can be brought back to life.
The gardener admits it would be difficult to revive, and Leila accepts the sad reality. Leila decides that it cannot be helped and chooses to move on from the past.
Leila reflects that while she planted them in doubt, she now fully believes in her husband.
Leila smiles and asks the gardener to purchase new seedlings for her next planting. The gardener agrees, suggesting they choose bright colors to refresh the beauty of the garden.
Allen approaches Leila to deliver a letter from Count Oscom's daughter that just arrived.
Leila is visibly shocked to receive communication from the woman who helped rescue her. Allen apologizes for opening the envelope to check for danger, though he claims he didn't read it.
Allen asks to read the letter together, and Leila agrees, curious about Camila's intentions.
Leila opens the letter, which is formally addressed to her as the Dear Countess Stanley.
The letter from Camila formally invites the couple to a tea party at the Ascom residence.
The message concludes by stating they look forward to seeing Leila and Allen at the gathering.
Allen notes that because Camila aided in her rescue, they cannot easily refuse the invitation.
Leila tells her husband she has no intention of refusing a chance to socialize.
Leila feels this is a great opportunity to have fun and finally socialize with other nobles. Allen remains wary, worrying about what might happen to Leila at the home of a spy. Allen expresses a deep sense of unease about letting Leila go to the party alone.
Leila offers a gentle smile, reassuring her husband that he is simply overthinking the situation.
She points out his worsening bruises, warning that his appearance might spark unwanted public rumors.
Allen remains silent, gripping his wife's hands tightly as he struggles with his lingering protective instincts.
Leila thanks him for his concern before hurrying away to prepare her dress for the event.
Watching her depart, Allen mutters her name under his breath, his expression clouded with worry.
Dressed in a beautiful yellow gown, Leila finally arrives at the prestigious Ascom residence.
The other noblewomen whisper among themselves as the newly appointed Marquess makes her formal entrance.
Camila greets her guest with a practiced smile, standing before her elegantly dressed domestic staff.
The hostess announces that the tea party has been prepared on the terrace for their enjoyment. Camila leads the group toward the garden, maintaining her facade of a gracious and welcoming noblewoman.
Camila formally welcomes Leila, expressing her long-standing desire to have a private conversation with her.
Leila returns the greeting warmly, apologizing for not properly thanking Camila for her previous assistance.
Camila stares intently at her guest, softly suggesting that the two of them become good friends.
A strange intensity flickers in Camila's eyes as she repeats the word friends with a smile. The group gathers around a table laden with sweets on the sun-drenched terrace for tea.
Camila introduces Leila to the other ladies, presenting her as the newest guest to their circle.
Leila expresses her hope that they can all get along, receiving polite but shallow responses.
One guest praises Allen's bravery against his curse before asking how Leila supports such man.
Camila laughs mockingly, pointedly reminding everyone that Leila was unable to save him during the attack.
The women continue their interrogation, asking Leila where she was while Camila was acting the hero.
Leila admits she was pushed and failed to act while the others mock her perceived weakness. Looking down at her lap, Leila finally realizes that this party was designed to humiliate her. Leila refuses to make excuses, taking full responsibility for her failure to save her husband then.
The noblewomen mockingly suggest that Allen needs a partner more like Camila to handle his affliction.
Leila snaps back, firmly declaring that her husband is a kind man and not a monster.
A guest points out Allen's history of violence, suggesting he needs a more capable woman.
Leila reacts with visible shock as the verbal assault on her marriage and status reaches its peak.
Camila asks if Leila understands that the consensus among the nobility is against her current marriage.
Camila bluntly states that for the sake of the palace, everyone wants Leila to divorce Allen.
The demand for divorce echoes in Leila's mind as she processes the sheer audacity of Camila's words.
Leila challenges Camila, questioning if the spy truly believes she is the only one capable of healing.
Camila mocks Leila's confidence, revealing her knowledge that Allen's condition is actually getting much worse.
Camila whispers a cruel insinuation that Leila's healing powers have failed because of her personal choices.
Stunned by the malicious personal attack, Leila stares at Camila with wide, disbelieving eyes.
Camila quickly feigns innocence, claiming she was only speaking hypothetically about the limitations of certain healers.
Camila smirks, telling Leila it is only natural to be inferior to someone who polishes their skills.
Leila clutches the fabric over her heart, reeling from the coordinated verbal assault by the noblewomen. She reflects on her commitment to Allen, refusing to let these cruel words break her resolve. A moment of quiet tension follows as Leila prepares to defend her love and her marriage. Leila swears to herself that she will heal her husband, feeling no doubts about her mission.
Leila turns the tables by bluntly asking Camila if she has romantic feelings for the Marquess. With a serene and confident expression, Leila confesses that she has loved Allen for a long time.
The surrounding noblewomen are visibly shaken by Leila's sudden and bold declaration of her genuine feelings.
Leila firmly states her refusal to divorce her husband, regardless of the opinions of the royal palace.
She notes that Camila could have any suitor she wishes, questioning why she targets the Stanley family.
Leila leans in close, her eyes filled with a new and powerful sense of determination and defiance.
Leila delivers a final stinging rebuttal, declaring that unlike Camila, she actually loves her husband.
She acknowledges her gratitude for the rescue but demands to know why Camila is plotting her divorce.
Standing tall and regained her composure, Leila begins to walk away from the defeated and stunned gossips.
The noblewomen are left in stunned silence following Leila's bold departure from the tea party.
Camila glares with intense fury before the scene shifts to a sunny day where Leila waits. Leila decides to call for a carriage just as someone's black boot steps onto the stone path.
A man's voice announces he has come to pick her up and take her back home.
Allen, wearing his mask and finery, welcomes his wife with open arms near their waiting carriage.
Leila happily rushes into Allen's embrace, finding comfort in his presence after the difficult social gathering.
She notes it is early but concludes he must have been deeply worried about her well-being.
Allen asks if anyone mistreated her, and Leila replies that it was a lovely tea party.
Leila suggests they return home and the carriage begins to roll away from the Askham residence.
At the Stanley mansion, Ada welcomes the couple home while carrying a small potted plant. The maid formally greets her master and mistress as they enter the foyer of their home.
Ada mentions the gardener replanted the garden, and Leila promises to inspect it the next morning.
Noticing the pot in Ada's hands, Leila asks the maid what she is carrying. Ada explains the potted flower is a special gift from the estate's thoughtful gardener.
She reveals the gardener saved the flower Leila planted, feeling it was a shame to discard.
Leila reacts with genuine surprise and curiosity at the gardener's effort to preserve her small plant.
Ada shares the gardener's belief that with love and care, the flower can still bloom beautifully. The maid affirms that since Leila raised it, the plant will surely thrive under her care.
Leila asks Allen if he remembers when she first moved in, and he remembers the color.
Allen presents a bouquet of flowers to Leila, his expression softening as he gazes at her. Leila reflects that the feelings she held when she first arrived are still deep in her heart.
Leila mentions something wonderful happened today, and Allen asks his wife to share the news.
With a bright smile, Leila reveals she confessed her love for him in front of everyone.
Allen is visibly flustered, a deep blush turning his face red beneath his ornate black mask.
Observing the couple's sweetness, Ada giggles softly as she watches them share this intimate moment together.
They reaffirm their connection, the bond between them growing stronger as they walk through the hall.
A peaceful night settles over the grand estate, the mansion standing quiet under the starry sky.
Camila stands alone by her window at night, looking out with a somber and brooding expression.
Camila reflects on Leila's unexpected backbone and questions the sincerity of her love for the Marquess.
Camila scoffs at the idea of a healer with weak powers attempting to save someone like Allen.
Moonlight filters through the window of the private chamber as the scene shifts to the couple.
In the quiet of their room, Allen and Leila hold hands tightly as they rest together.
The couple shares a quiet, intimate moment in bed, finding peace in each other's close proximity.
Soft pink and white flowers bloom nearby, symbolizing the growing love and hope in their relationship. Leila looks at her husband with a serene and loving expression during their private time together. Thoughts of the tea party continue to haunt the atmosphere as Leila reflects on Camila's actions.
A memory of the tea party table appears, highlighting the setting of their previous social confrontation.
Leila recalls the judgmental noblewomen, reminding her of the public pressure surrounding her marriage.
A flicker of uncertainty crosses Leila's mind as she wonders if Camila truly likes her husband.
Allen notices her pensive look and asks why she has such a serious expression on her face. Resting in his arms, Leila admits she was thinking about Lady Camila and her possible feelings.
Allen's expression darkens as he questions why she is dwelling on Count Askham's daughter right now.
Leila asks her husband if he is not a fan of Lady Camila, seeking his honesty.
Allen pulls her closer and bluntly states that the other woman is really not his type.
Leila pushes further, asking what he would do if Camila were actually in love with him. Allen looks at his wife with serious eyes, giving her his full attention and silent consideration.
He suggests Camila is only pressuring her for divorce because of the Felix family's political fall.
Allen firmly reminds Leila that he chose her and needs no other reason than that.
Overcome with relief, Leila smiles and thanks her husband for his unwavering devotion to her.
They share a deep, meaningful look, their love for one another overshadowing all external schemes.
Leila stares lovingly at her husband during a close, intimate moment between the two of them.
Allen confesses his love for Leila while she reflects on how close she felt to losing everything.
Shooting stars streak across the twilight sky, casting a peaceful glow over the quiet evening.
The grand estate stands illuminated against the night sky as the scene shifts to the interior. In her private chamber, Camila reviews a formal letter by candlelight with a look of intense concentration.
Camila realizes the enemy's next move after carefully reading the intelligence report delivered to her.
Camila dismisses the enemy's plan as foolish while she tears the parchment into pieces with her hands.
Camila burns the letter, mocking the intelligence of the nation of Duca and deciding to take action.
Camila plans to increase the prestige of the Askham family by boosting her reputation as a healer.
Camila wonders how Leila intends to protect Allen while she prepares her own scheme with a quill. A bright, clear blue sky signals the arrival of a new day at the Stanley estate.
Leila waters the white flowers in the garden while the gardener works diligently in the background.
The pink-haired noblewoman and the gardener work side by side tending to the lush greenery of the estate. The gardener notes the beauty of the flowers Leila planted, and she expresses her gratitude with a smile.
The gardener admits he brought special supplies because he wanted to see his mistress smile more often.
Leila beams with genuine happiness as she enjoys the peaceful morning work in her beloved garden.
A sharp look flashes across the gardener's face as he observes his mistress from behind.
The gardener asks about the plants, prompting Leila to discuss her plans for expanding the garden's flower beds.
Leila enthusiastically mentions that her husband would be pleased to see the garden's growth and improvement.
The gardener casually asks about Allen's current location while continuing to work on the hedges nearby.
Leila explains that Allen is currently busy working in his office and asks why he is interested. The gardener suggests he wanted to ask the master about his personal flower preferences for the garden.
Leila pauses in surprise, her eyes widening as she processes the gardener's unexpected and unusual question.
Leila clarifies that Allen knows nothing of flowers and always trusts her personal taste for the garden.
The gardener quickly apologizes for his mistake, rubbing his neck awkwardly to hide his growing internal frustration.
The man thinks to himself about how he almost compromised his simple mission through his careless questioning.
A shaman assassin reveals his true plan to kill Leila, causing Allen's curse to accelerate and finish him. Disguised as the gardener, the assassin contemplates the most cruel way to torture and eliminate his target.
The imposter gardener deliberately crushes a red flower under his boot as he walks behind his mistress.
Leila notices the destroyed flower on the path and reacts with a sudden sense of alarm and confusion.
Red petals fall as the atmosphere in the garden turns suddenly cold and ominous.
Leila looks at the man with concern, asking if he is all right after his clumsy movement.
The man feigns embarrassment, claiming that his hand simply slipped while he was tending to the plants.
Leila confronts the man directly, questioning if he is truly the gardener who usually works the estate.
The imposter reacts with visible shock as his disguise begins to fail under Leila's sharp, direct inquiry.
A recruitment notice for a scanlation group appears, seeking new editors and translators for various upcoming projects.
A credits page appears as a man in the garden looks up at Leila with a bewildered expression.
The disguised man asks Leila what she means by her sudden and pointed questioning of his identity.
Leila points out that a real gardener would never have been so careless as to crush a flower. The man continues his facade, smiling as he claims that even professionals can make mistakes sometimes. Leila stands her ground, realizing that the man's error was only one of many suspicious behaviors today.
She reflects on all the unusual questions the man asked that a regular gardener would never have mentioned.
The imposter's eyes fill with a dark, murderous intent as he realizes his cover has been blown. Leila explains her reasoning, noting that she wasn't notified of the gardener's arrival by her head maid. The assassin accepts that he has been discovered, his expression shifting into a cold and predatory smirk.
Leila spots a bruise on the man that does not belong on the gardener she previously knew.
Leila demands to know the man's true identity as she backs away from the dangerous stranger in her garden. Terrified, Leila screams for her maid Ada to come to her assistance immediately as the threat escalates.
Ada and the other maids rush into the garden, frantically asking their mistress what has gone wrong.
Leila points at the imposter, declaring he is an assassin who has come to take her husband's life. Ada and the other maids react with sheer disbelief to the news of an imposter.
The intruder moves with blinding speed, mockingly noting the spirited nature of the young mistress.
A chorus of terrified screams erupts from the maids as a dark presence looms over them.
Allen and Leila react in horror to the sudden escalation of violence in their peaceful garden.
Clinging to her watering can, Leila realizes she must act to save those she loves.
Driven by determination, the pink-haired woman prepares to protect her husband and the estate staff.
Leila throws the heavy watering can with all her might, striking the intruder with surprising force.
Standing her ground, Leila defiantly tells the fake gardener she will never allow him to harm Allen.
The assassin admits his failure to kill Allen, but his expression suggests a far more sinister plan.
A dark aura surrounds the assassin's hand as he reveals that Leila is his true target.
The attacker grabs Leila by the throat, coldly declaring his intent to end her life immediately. The assassin explains that Leila is an obstacle because her healing powers can save Allen Stanley.
Leila realizes with dread that if she dies, there will be no one left to heal Allen. Leila fears that Allen will suffer alone again while he shouts in the distant background. Refusing to allow such a tragedy, Leila's protective charm begins to glow with an intense light.
The assassin is stunned by the resistance, having never encountered an ability user with such power.
A blinding flash erupts as the attacker realizes his own curse is being reflected back. Allen and his guards rush toward the garden, frantically searching for the source of the chaos.
Ada cries out for help, warning the arriving soldiers that an intruder has infiltrated the grounds.
Allen moves in a blur of motion, his mask partially obscured by the intensity of his speed.
Allen shouts his wife's name as he reaches her just as the magical light begins fading.
A close-up shows a firm hand grabbing onto Lila's clothing to pull her away from danger.
Allen pulls a trembling Leila into his arms, providing her with a much-needed sense of security.
Allen gently reassures the trembling Leila, apologizing for scaring her while he takes control.
With a single, powerful kick, Allen sends the imposter gardener flying backward across the green grass.
Allen stands tall over the defeated man, identifying him as a shaman from the kingdom of Duca.
Allen realizes the enemy targeted Leila only because they were unable to kill him directly beforehand.
Delivering a brutal punch, Allen calls the assassin a despicable fool for threatening his beloved wife.
Allen commands his subordinate to secure the area, receiving an immediate and dutiful affirmation in response.
The estate's guards work together to bind the unconscious shaman with hastily applied rope under the sun. Ada comforts her mistress, acknowledging the terrifying nature of the encounter they just survived together. The headmaid reassures Leila that she is safe and has grown remarkably stronger today.
Reflecting on her fear, Leila reaffirms her resolve to protect Allen regardless of the personal cost.
Allen approaches Leila with a softer expression, his focus entirely on ensuring she is truly unharmed. Allen pulls his wife into a deep hug, praising her for enduring the traumatic event well.
Looking up at her husband, Leila feels a wave of relief wash over her in his arms. Allen holds Leila close, her internal thoughts lingering on him during their emotional and quiet reunion.
Allen orders Ada to summon soldiers immediately, noting the abnormality of an assassin infiltrating so deeply.
Allen watches as Ada rushes away, his mind racing with questions about the current security breach.
Allen reflects on the enemy's cowardice in targeting his wife instead of facing him in combat. A sense of deep regret fills Allen as he wishes he had arrived sooner to protect her. Allen's eyes narrow with a cold protective fury as he holds his wife even more tightly. A pink-haired elf with long ears gazes thoughtfully as the scene transitions away from the garden.
A few days later, Allen kneels before the king in a grand audience chamber for briefing.
The king addresses Allen Stanley, explaining that he has a specific reason for calling him here. The king reveals information about the neighboring kingdom of Duca, which plans to start a war. The king is shown in a close-up, appearing weary as he delivers the heavy news. The king informs Allen that he wants him to lead on the front lines once again. Allen accepts the command, but the king notes that many soldiers still refuse to follow him.
The king acknowledges that despite the soldiers' fears, Allen's overwhelming strength remains a vital necessity.
Standing before his army, Allen Stanley hears that he is considered equal to an entire enemy cavalry regiment.
Looking toward his king, the black-masked man concludes that he is being asked to fight the war alone. The king closes his eyes and gives a solemn nod in response to his general's grim assessment. The king explains that while he'd prefer not to send Allen, their soldiers are weaker than Duca's forces. Allen Stanley accepts his duty, vowing to serve the country honorably despite the heavy burden placed upon him. Seated upon his grand throne, the king silently pleads for Allen to forgive him for this command.
Allen reflects that this is a suicide mission where he may die, but his thoughts turn to Leila.
As he clenches his fist, Allen wonders who will be left to protect Leila if he is gone. Recalling his past, Allen notes he used to fight alone without care because he had nothing to lose.
Allen looks at the vision of his wife and realizes he has someone to protect and cannot die.
A close-up of the masked man shows his intense focus as he breathes his wife's name.
Days later, the couple shares a quiet moment together as Allen reads and Leila works on her knitting.
Leila observes her husband from the side, thinking to herself that his expression always seems to look sad.
The pink-haired noblewoman steals a worried glance at Allen, noting his distant and somber demeanor during their time.
Clutching her knitting needles tightly, Leila wonders what she can possibly do to make Allen smile again.
Determined to help, Leila resolves that she cannot be depressed too and must do something for her husband.
Leila suddenly suggests a walk in the garden, noting the weather is lovely to brighten the heavy mood.
Allen looks up from his book in surprise, letting out a small sound of acknowledgement at her proposal.
Looking at the gazebo outside, Allen agrees that taking a walk in the garden might be very nice.
Leila mentions the real gardener brought new seedlings and asks if they should go look at them together.
Standing up from the sofa, Allen admits to his wife that he doesn't actually know much about flowers. Leila offers to teach him, promising to decorate his room with whichever flowers he ends up liking most. A warm, gentle smile spreads across Leila's face as she enjoys the moment of connection with her husband.
The scene transitions to the interior of a room as someone knocks on the large wooden doors. Allen sits at his desk with a quill in hand, looking toward the door as it begins opening.
Leila enters the office carrying a tray of cookies, explaining she and the cooks baked them for him.
Ada the maid sets down tea, urging the master to stop working so much and rest with Leila. Allen holds a round cookie up to his face, looking at it curiously before taking a bite.
Standing among a border of white roses, Leila smiles brightly as she offers a cookie to her husband.
Allen takes a bite of the cookie, his mask partially obscuring his expression as he tastes her baking. Allen praises the delicious cookies and Leila's talent, while she credits the cooks for being very good teachers.
Allen eats the cookie in silence, his expression becoming thoughtful as he processes the small kindness from Leila.
Ada places a fresh vase of pink flowers on Allen's desk as he continues to review his paperwork.
Looking at the bouquet, Allen asks if those are the flowers that Leila has been growing recently.
The maid gives a small, pleasant smile as she confirms that the flowers are indeed from the mistress.
Ada explains that Leila grew them because she noticed the master has been looking quite down lately.
Looking at Allen with concern, the maid asks if there is something specifically troubling him at the moment.
Allen turns to Ada and tells her that if anything happens, he is officially entrusting Leila to her. A look of shock and confusion crosses Ada's face as she asks what brought on such a sudden request.
Ada grips her dress and tells Allen that protecting Lady Leila is supposed to be his job, not hers.
Allen remains silent, his purple eyes visible through his mask as he listens to the maid's earnest protest.
A vision of a laughing, happy Leila holding a bouquet of flowers appears as the scene shifts.
A blue-tinted view of the bedroom shows a discarded dress draped over the side of a chair.
In the dimly lit room, Allen and Leila share an intimate embrace as she whispers his name softly.
Leila wonders why he is holding her so tightly and asks what burden he is currently carrying inside.
Allen gazes down at his wife with a look of intense longing and sadness as they lie together.
Allen tells Leila to listen, prompting her to look up at him with a startled and expectant expression.
Holding her close, Allen breaks the news that war is starting and he must stand on the battlefield alone.
Leila's eyes fill with sudden dread and shock as she repeats the word war in her mind.
News of the war with Duca spreads instantly, bringing a wave of fear to the citizens under the rain. Rain falls steadily over dark, silhouetted trees against a somber blue sky, setting a heavy mood.
Allen and Leila share a quiet, tense meal in a grand dining room while Ada stands nearby.
Leila gazes downward with a sorrowful expression, her purple eyes reflecting a deep and growing anxiety.
Leila looks at her untouched meal, thinking that her intense worry has completely stolen her appetite. Allen turns toward his wife and tells her that there is something important he needs to say.
Leila looks up at her husband with a startled expression and gives a small, quiet affirmation. A close-up of a speech bubble emphasizes the grim reality of standing on the front lines alone.
Allen looks toward Leila with a steady, somber expression as he prepares to deliver the difficult news.
Leila's eyes widen in shock as she repeats the terrifying thought of him going to war alone. A vision of a massive, overwhelming army highlights the impossible odds Allen must face by himself. Allen walks away, wondering if his mission truly means fighting the entire enemy force without any help.
Allen looks intensely at Leila, asking if she will believe in him and wait for his return.
Leila gazes at her husband with a mixture of sadness and lingering disbelief at his sudden announcement.
Leila resolves to remain strong and hide her weakness to avoid causing her husband any additional worry.
Reflecting on Allen's honesty, Leila feels certain that he will absolutely return home to her as promised. A close-up shows Leila's lips as she prepares to offer her husband a final, parting promise.
Leila smiles warmly at Allen, promising to transform their garden into a flower field for his return.
Allen lets out a soft, appreciative chuckle, telling his wife that he truly looks forward to that.
Allen places a hand on Leila's shoulder, explaining his plan for the manor's temporary management during his absence.
Allen pulls Leila into a deep hug, urging her to live life while believing in his eventual return. Standing among white flowers, Allen takes his wife's hands and offers her a final, firm reassurance. Allen gently reminds Leila to eat well so she stays healthy while waiting for him to come home.
Leila gives a soft affirmation, her expression revealing the deep emotional pain of their impending separation.
Allen offers a small, gentle smile before turning away to finalize the preparations for his departure.
Allen walks through the large doors, leaving his wife behind as he begins his dangerous military mission.
Tears begin to fall from Leila's eyes as the weight of the moment finally becomes too much.
Crying openly, Leila acknowledges that Allen is undertaking this suicidal mission specifically to protect their home.
Leila wipes her eyes, struggling to compose herself after her husband has left the room.
A close-up of Leila shows her tear-filled eyes as she focuses on her resolve to wait faithfully.
Dressed in full military regalia, Allen Stanley prepares to lead his country as the war officially begins. At last, the day arrives for Allen to head to the front lines as war begins.
Leila watches from a distance as Allen grips his sword, vowing to remain undefeated in the coming conflict.
Leila rushes to her husband, offering him a handmade charm to keep him safe on the battlefield.
Allen looks down at the gift in his gloved hand, speaking his wife's name with quiet affection.
Allen pulls Leila into a final firm embrace, thanking her for the thoughtful and protective charm.
Leila whispers that she only hopes the small gift can provide him even a little bit of help.
The couple shares a final quiet moment together before Allen must depart for the theater of war.
Allen places his hand over the charm, feeling a sense of connection to his wife's enduring love. Allen tells Leila that with her gift, they will always be together, despite the distance of war.
Leila watches her husband go, her face illuminated by a hopeful but bittersweet and lingering light.
Allen turns away from his wife and the gathered maids, focused entirely on the grim path ahead.
Looking back one last time, Leila silently pleads for her husband to return home to her safely.
Banners fly over a marching army as the kingdom's forces mobilize for the massive conflict ahead.
Allen rides his horse through the chaotic battlefield as soldiers clash violently in the sunset's fiery glow.
Allen dismounts his horse in a scorched, desolate area, surrounded by the remnants of recent fighting.
Allen strokes his horse's head, telling the loyal animal to run to safety and avoid the fighting.
The horse lets out a loud neigh as it prepares to leave the dangerous and chaotic combat zone.
Allen watches his horse gallop away into the distance across the barren and war-torn landscape.
The masked man turns his gaze back toward the front lines with an unwavering and cold resolve.
Allen reflects that Leila's healing charm allows him to endure the battlefield's oppressive and cursed atmosphere.
Allen vows to keep his promise as a soldier attacks him, calling him a cursed Marquis.
With a powerful sweep of his hand, Allen deflects the soldier's strike amidst the fiery chaos.
Allen observes the Duca army's preparations, noting they brought shamans specifically to use curses against him.
Dark energy blasts soldiers into the air as the enemy shamans begin their ritualistic chanting.
Enveloped in purple light, Allen identifies the group of shamans as a particularly troublesome set of enemies.
Allen stands alone before a long line of hooded shamans ready to unleash their dark magic.
Panicked soldiers scream for the monster to absorb the curse for them while Allen remains stoic.
Close-up of Allen's boots as he stands firm on the cracked and glowing earth. A promotional banner for Ferry scans displays several characters and information regarding chapter availability. Surrounded by fallen banners, soldiers yell for the monster to take the curse and fight alone.
Close-up of Allen's eyes glowing purple as he processes the harsh words from his own allies.
Allen smiles grimly, accepting his monstrous nature and noting his orders to operate without any assistance.
Allen realizes only his internal power can oppose the shaman's curses that Kyra cannot possibly counter.
Reflecting on his meeting with the king, Allen understands he was ordered to act completely alone.
Allen looks down with a heavy heart, realizing he must defeat the shamans using only his strength.
Allen demands that the soldiers provide backup, but orders them to stay away once the battle ends.
Allen Stanley charges forward into the fray, letting out a fierce shout as archers take their positions.
A barrage of arrows rains down as a hooded figure screams in terror from the incoming attack.
Soldiers clash on the field while wondering what Allen's true plan is for the current engagement. Gazing at a vision of his wife, Allen resolves to return to Leila no matter the cost. As shamans chant his name, Allen prays for God to grant Leila a blessing instead of Kyra.
A powerful wave of dark energy slams into Allen, pushing him back with immense force.
Gritting his teeth, Allen struggles against the physical and magical pressure of the collective curse. Allen notes that his own curse and the shaman's power are balancing out, making for a stalemate. Swiping his sword, Allen resolves to finish the shamans while he can still control his own will.
Leaning heavily on his sword, Allen pants with exhaustion as he stands among the fallen.
Allen refuses to succumb to the curse easily, his expression one of sheer defiance and fatigue.
Shocked by the sight, Allen realizes that even more shamans are gathering to oppose him.
Allen lets out a blood-curdling roar, his face showing the strain of the ongoing combat. Striking down enemies with renewed vigor, Allen insists that his work is not yet finished. Standing amidst a sea of corpses, Allen vows not to stop until every shaman is dead. Allen prepares to charge again, screaming in fury as he faces the next line of enemies.
Allen's body feels heavy and unresponsive, realizing he has absorbed too many curses to move properly.
Only Allen can fight the shamans, his glowing purple eye fixed on his next target.
A massive purple energy slash cuts across the screen, accompanied by a loud, desperate scream.
Vertical streaks of light and shadow indicate a moment of intense transition or extreme magical power.
Bloodied and staggering among the dead, Allen asks where the rest of his enemies have gone.
Under a dark, stormy sky, Allen laughs with manic intensity as he searches for more foes.
Allen collapses to the ground, admitting he lacks the strength to resist the curses any longer.
Allen warns the soldiers to run away, fearing he is about to commit a terrible sin.
Close-up of Allen's face, he begs the frightened soldiers to run while he still has control.
Charging forward with his sword raised, Allen lets out a final violent command to die.
A soldier screams in terror, calling Allen a monster and begging for his life to be spared.
Mention of a wife and child triggers a vision of Leila, causing Allen to hesitate in combat. An arrow strikes Allen's shoulder near the charm, catching him off guard during the emotional distraction. A vision of a weeping Leila appears behind Allen as he continues his grim, bloody struggle. Allen falls among the corpses, gasping for breath as he reflects on his failing strength.
Looking at the sky, Allen wonders if being a monster is his only possible destiny.
As he lies on the battlefield, Allen's final thought is of Leila calling out her name.
Rain falls over the silent, grand manor, signifying the heavy atmosphere of loss and uncertainty.
Leila smiles with radiant joy as she expresses her deep gratitude to her new husband.
Sir Allen gestures to a framed sword, explaining it was a prestigious gift from the king.
Leila stares at the royal weapon in amazement, impressed by the high honor he possesses.
Leila thinks a man with such high royal standing wouldn't truly choose someone like her.
Leila worries his kindness is only pity and resolves to work hard to stay needed.
Sir Allen calls for his head maid Ada to begin attending to his new bride.
A brown-haired maid named Ada introduces herself, offering to assist with any of Leila's needs.
Ada formally greets her lady politely, but Leila shyly requests that she stop using formal titles.
Sir Allen instructs Ada to help Leila wash and dress before they share their first meal.
Leila nervously tries to speak, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden and intense royal level of service.
Leila glances back towards Sir Allen as the maids lead her away to be bathed.
Standing alone in the hall, Sir Allen watches her departure with a very solemn expression.
While washing her, Ada explains the Lord's desire to wash away her old life's memories.
Ada tells her that her life here will be completely different from her past hardships.
Ada playfully promises to make Leila beautiful enough to take Lord Stanley's breath away tonight.
Leila reflects on her dream of becoming beautiful enough to stand beside the nobleman. Watching the water, Leila wonders if her childhood dream of being with him is finally real. Gentle ripples in the water reflect the peaceful atmosphere as Leila's transformation begins to unfold.
The maids finish their work and stand back to admire Leila's incredible and elegant transformation.
Leila gasps at her own reflection while wearing her stunning, ornate golden wedding gown.
Ada praises her lady's appearance, noting that Lord Stanley has chosen a truly wonderful bride.
Leila notices Ada's reaction and asks if something is wrong with her finished new look.
Leila admits she has never worn such fine clothing and asks if she looks strange.
Ada offers encouragement, telling her she looks gorgeous and urging her to have more confidence.
Leila practices smiling as Ada cheers, declaring a smile is better than any makeup.
Sir Allen sits alone at the massive dining table waiting for his new bride's arrival.
A servant announces Lady Leila's arrival as Sir Allen looks up from the long table.
Through the slit of his mask, Sir Allen's eyes show visible emotion as Leila enters.
Leila enters the grand hall, appearing like royalty in her exquisite and glowing wedding gown.
Leila catches her breath, feeling the sudden weight of her husband's intense and focused gaze.
Leila notes his warm smile but thinks he won't call her beautiful out loud today.
During dinner, Leila worries the marriage is pity and admits she feels a bit lonely.
Sir Allen signals the staff to begin service as the couple starts their formal dinner.
A plate of gourmet food is presented, looking far more luxurious than anything Leila's seen.
The couple dines in the quiet, opulent hall as Leila tries to adjust to status.
Leila marvels at the taste of the food, noting how soft the freshly baked bread is.
She realizes Sir Allen is providing this feast because he understands her difficult past history.
Leila struggles to overcome her habit of wanting to clear her own plates after eating.
The heavy silence at the table makes Leila feel nervous about what Sir Allen is thinking. Sir Allen continues eating quietly, his presence dominating the room despite his lack of words.
Breaking the silence, Sir Allen mentions his plans regarding their upcoming formal and public wedding ceremony.
Leila is shocked by the mention of a ceremony, having not expected a proper wedding.
Allen explains the ceremony will follow a report to the king and apologizes for the wait.
Dazed by the revelation, Leila reflects on the reality of having a proper public marriage.
Allen asks if she is bothered by the arrangement, but she only worries about her worth. Allen confirms their legal status as husband and wife, ensuring she never returns to her family.
Sir Allen dismisses the entire staff until morning and calls Leila to follow him privately.
Sir Allen reaches out his hand, inviting Leila to join him for the next step. Leila's heart beats rapidly as she places her hand in his, accepting his silent lead.
As he leads her to his room, Leila wonders if being his wife is truly okay.
Leila stares out the window, noting the rain has not ceased since her husband's departure.
Gazing at the storm, Leila wishes the falling rain could act as a saving blessing. Looking toward the sky, Leila desperately pleads for a divine power to save her husband.
Leila prays with her eyes closed, hoping her kind and gentle husband remains completely unharmed.
Startled by a sudden noise, Leila realizes a fast messenger is currently approaching the manor. Rushing toward the entrance, Leila prepares to hear the news the messenger has brought back.
Standing in the torrential rain, a brown-haired maid watches the messenger arrive on horseback.
Leila reaches the foyer and sees several maids gathered near the large, ornate manor doors. Leila demands to know what is wrong and asks Ada about the messenger's sudden arrival. Ada rushes forward to steady Leila, her expression filled with urgent and heavy emotional weight.
A close-up shows Ada's hands gripping Leila's shoulders as the tension in the room rises.
Ada explains that Allen annihilated an entire division and defeated several of the enemy's shamans.
Ada tearfully reveals that Allen suffered severe injuries inflicted by his own allies during battle. Ada requests immediate medical arrangements, stating that Allen will return home in a critical state.
Hugging Ada tightly, Leila orders the preparation of a bed while thanking her for the news.
Leila vows with absolute certainty that she will heal every wound and save Allen's life.
Ada hopes that Allen's strength and Leila's healing will ensure that everything ends up fine.
Looking into Ada's eyes, Leila firmly asks the maid to place her complete trust in her.
Leila repeats her conviction to save her husband as the maids begin to mobilize quickly. Ada turns to the gathered staff and commands everyone to begin the necessary preparations immediately. The maids hurry through the manor halls, eager to fulfill their mistress's urgent and life-saving orders. Determined to succeed, Leila whispers to herself that she will definitely save her beloved husband. Leila takes a deep breath and tells herself to maintain her composure during this crisis. At nightfall, Allen returns to the manor unconscious and covered in dark, spreading curse marks. Close-up shots reveal the extensive and dark marks of the curse covering Allen's face and shoulder.
Leila observes the depth of the curse, touched that Allen never harmed any of his allies.
Leila kisses her husband's forehead, begging him to wake up and return to her once more. Tears fall from Leila's eyes as she continues to plead for her husband to regain consciousness. Leila holds and kisses Allen's hand, her heart breaking at his silent and unresponsive state. Sitting by the large bed, Leila remains close to her husband as he lies still. Despite Leila's presence and efforts, her husband remains unconscious and does not open his eyes.
The scene shifts to a peaceful and starry night sky as time continues to pass quietly.
A vase of fresh flowers sits in the room as Leila softly calls out her husband's name.
Leila tells her unconscious husband that the garden flowers have finally bloomed just as she promised.
Smiling sadly, Leila expresses her deep desire to go out and see the flowers with him.
Leila leans down to kiss her husband's face, her devotion to him remaining steadfast and true. Leaning over the bed, Leila hopes the heavy curse on his body will eventually begin unraveling.
Ada enters the room and informs Leila that she has brought an extra newspaper edition.
Ada reports that thanks to Allen's efforts, the war has finally reached a balanced state.
Leila asks what the problem is after Ada pauses her report with a worried expression. Ada explains that the enemy is cornering Kyra by using shamans and healers as wartime weapons.
Leila is shocked by the news that magic users are being treated as tools and weapons.
Looking toward her husband, Leila reflects that treating human beings as tools should never be allowed.
Leila thinks about how Allen was exploited as a monster and his curse used as a tool.
Leila clenches her hand, thinking about how Allen was used and then thrown away like trash.
Leila grieves over the selfishness of war, believing that magic should never be used for harm.
Leila remembers Allen's resolve to fight alone on the battlefield despite knowing he would be exploited.
Leila wonders if her husband was trying to atone for being cursed or for past actions.
Ada looks back at her mistress one last time before quietly exiting the dimly lit room.
Leila gently strokes her husband's face, her heart overflowing with love and quiet, persistent sorrow. Leila touches her husband's arm, noting that his bruises have started to fade slightly. Tears stream down Leila's face as she pleads to hear Allen's gentle voice again.
Gazing at her husband's scarred face, Leila begs for Allen to wake up and return.
Allen remains motionless and unconscious in the quiet, blue-lit confines of their grand manor bedroom.
Entering the chamber, Leila approaches the bed to begin her daily care for her husband. A flash of bright morning light enters the room as the heavy curtains are shifted.
Standing by the large window, Leila pulls the curtains back to let in the sun.
Leila looks out the window, noting that Allen has remained asleep since his difficult return.
Leila greets the sleeping Allen, telling him that the weather outside is quite nice today.
Noticing her husband is sweating, Leila offers to wipe his face to help him rest.
Leila prepares a basin of water, her movements quiet and practiced as she tends to Allen. With a gentle cloth, Leila wipes away the sweat from Allen's bruised and unresponsive face. Leila mentions the beautiful garden flowers, hoping the news of their blooming reaches her husband. Holding Allen's hand, Leila tearfully expresses her deep desire for him to see the garden.
Leila plans to decorate the room with flowers and recalls Ada's enthusiasm for making cake.
Leila plans to bake with the maid while Allen remains silent and still in bed. Overcome with grief, Leila stares at her husband with eyes full of tears and hope.
Leila stands up from the bedside, her posture showing the weight of her continued mourning.
The grand manor stands surrounded by vibrant red roses blooming under the clear morning sky.
The sun shines brightly over the estate, casting a warm glow across the peaceful grounds. A delicate hand plucks a vibrant red rose from a bush, its petals shimmering in the light.
Leila walks through the lush rose garden with a basket, a maid following close behind.
A gardener presents a large bouquet of roses, telling Leila they have bloomed quite magnificently.
Leila smells the roses and notes their wonderful scent with a soft, appreciative smile.
Leila is certain that Allen will surely like the fresh roses when he finally wakes. The gardeners watch Leila walk away, their faces showing concern for her obvious emotional strain. A soft breeze catches Leila's pink hair as she pauses during her walk through the garden.
Leila encourages the gardeners to keep the flowers blooming for whenever Allen finally wakes up.
Leila offers a wide, happy smile, yet her eyes remain clouded with lingering sorrow. The estate staff bows and promises to handle the garden with great care for them.
Carrying her basket of roses, Leila looks back at the manor and calls out Allen's name.
A silent message hangs in the air, stating that everyone is waiting for Allen to wake.
A maid watches Leila pass by, her expression filled with worry for her mistress's well-being.
As evening approaches, the grand bedroom remains silent, filled only with the softest twilight glow.
Leila rests her head on Allen's chest, seeking comfort from his steady but silent heartbeat. Tears stream from Lila's closed eye as she stays by her husband's side throughout the night. Dark marks continue to cover Allen's skin, a physical remnant of the curses he once bore.
Leila watches the fading marks on Allen's neck, her purple eyes reflecting her internal struggle.
Pointing to his arm, Leila tells the sleeping Allen that his bruises are slowly fading away.
Desperate for a solution, Leila wonders what she must do to wake her beloved husband.
Leila sits alone at the head of a long, empty dining table attended by silent maids.
Exhaustion is visible on Leila's pale face as she stares blankly at her untouched breakfast.
Ada approaches the table with a tray, her expression full of concern for her mistress. Ada notes Lila's poor complexion and suggests she rest, but Leila claims she is fine.
Despite Ada's persistent worry, Leila maintains she is fine and doesn't need any rest.
Leila vows to stay strong for Allen, but she suddenly feels faint as her cup spills.
Leila collapses forward onto the table, her cup spilling tea everywhere as she loses consciousness. Ada rushes forward in a panic, asking if she is all right as Leila weakly apologizes. Ada acknowledges Lila's worry for her husband, but warns she might collapse if she doesn't rest.
Leila quietly acknowledges the maid's warning with a somber and heavily shadowed expression.
Ada begs her mistress not to overexert herself as Leila despairs over Allen's continued slumber. Leila admits her fear of being idle while Allen remains unconscious, her hands trembling with anxiety.
Ada looks at Leila with an expression of profound sadness and sympathy for her mistress.
Ada reassures Leila that Allen is strong and would never think of leaving her behind alone. Kneeling before Leila, Ada holds her hands to offer comfort amidst the flowers of the estate. Leila tells herself that she must maintain her belief in her husband's eventual recovery and return.
A heavy sense of uncertainty lingers as Leila wonders what her next course of action should be. A white dove flies toward the manor as a mysterious letter arrives during the bright afternoon.
Leila holds a handwritten letter signed by Camila, its contents promising a visit to the estate.
Holding the letter, Leila walks through the grand hallway while Ada follows closely with a worried gaze. Ada suggests refusing the visit, fearing that Lady Camila is plotting something malicious against them.
Leila suggests Camila might be worried, but Ada reminds her of the lady's past cruelty.
Leila admits she is happy that someone is visiting, which shocks Ada given the visitor's identity.
Leila laments how the country has cruelly abandoned Allen despite his many sacrifices for their safety.
Ada notices Leila's dress trembling as the mistress struggles to contain her overwhelming and bitter emotions.
Leila begins to voice a hopeful thought but suddenly pauses, leaving Ada confused by her hesitation.
Forcing a gentle smile, Leila tells her maid that it is nothing and dismisses her concern.
Leila instructs Ada to prepare for Lady Camilla's arrival, and the maid obediently acknowledges the command.
Gazing out the window, Leila hopes the powerful Lady Camila possesses the knowledge to wake Allen.
The scene fades as the focus shifts toward future developments within the unfolding story.
Sir Allen calls Leila's name as he tenderly holds her face in the moonlight.
Sir Allen acknowledges their marriage but expresses his desire to wait until the formal ceremony.
Sir Allen reiterates that they should wait for the wedding ceremony before deepening their physical relationship.
Leila reflects on Sir Allen's sincerity and respect, feeling a pang of bittersweet emotion.
Leila secretly wishes to belong to Sir Allen immediately, moved by his gentlemanly restraint.
Leila resolves to be useful to Sir Allen, even if she believes her love is unrequited.
Leila reveals her secret healing powers to a shocked Sir Allen as they stand among roses.
Leila recounts the traumatic moment her stepbrother attempted to assault her in the garden. Leila explains how she instinctively reflected her stepbrother's magic during his attack.
Leila describes the surge of power she felt while recalling her late mother's encouraging words.
Leila reveals her healing crest awakened from her love, allowing her to recognize her new ability.
Leila explains that her divine healing power caused her physical pain to vanish in an instant.
Leila confesses she hid her powers to prevent her cruel family from exploiting her further.
Sir Allen utters Leila's name, visibly moved by the story of her hidden suffering and strength. Leila offers to use her healing powers exclusively for Sir Allen, pleading for his acceptance. Sir Allen embraces Leila and explains the intimate requirement for her healing magic to take effect.
Leila confirms her awareness of the intimate terms and reaffirms her commitment to healing him.
Sir Allen carries Leila toward the bed after she asks if he truly accepts her offer. Sir Allen promises to be gentle while warning her that his needs might be intense.
Sir Allen leans in toward Leila, the atmosphere thick with romance and newfound intimacy.
Leila tenderly places her hands on Sir Allen's shoulders as they finally share a deep connection.
The couple shares a passionate kiss, sealing their bond of love in the privacy of the bedroom.
Leila reflects on their intimate night, doubting if it was love or merely the healing process.
Fearing his actions might be pity, Leila focuses entirely on using her magic to heal him.
Sir Allen informs Leila he must visit the king and will return later that evening.
Leila politely wishes Sir Allen a safe journey as he prepares to depart the mansion. Leila hesitatingly calls out to Sir Allen before he leaves, catching his attention for a request.
Leila asks Sir Allen if he can bring back flower buds for her to plant here.
Sir Allen agrees to find flowers for Leila, despite initially thinking them unnecessary for his home.
Sir Allen instructs Ada to summon the gardeners to assist Leila with her new project. Sir Allen affectionately pats Leila's head before departing the estate while the staff watches on. Leila begins taking down the old curtains herself, surprising the maids who rush to her side.
Leila explains her desire to brighten the mansion to create a more relaxing environment for Allen.
Leila and Ada agree that the current dark decorations stifle the sunlight in the grand mansion. Ada fully supports Leila's plan and offers to replace every curtain according to her mistress's preferences.
Leila worries about overstepping, but Ada reassures her and prepares to order new materials right away.
Leila thanks Ada and asks for her help in coordinating the gardeners for the outdoor work.
Leila enthusiastically offers to help with the physical labor, much to Ada's polite but firm protest.
Leila joyfully reflects on how her former chores now feel like a heavenly hobby in her new life. Ada directs the gardeners to prune the trees to allow more light to reach the building.
Leila shares her vision of transforming the overgrown garden into a vibrant, sunlit field of flowers. Both Ada and the gardeners insist that Leila should leave the hard labor to the staff.
Leila begs to be included in the work, unable to simply watch others labor without helping.
The mansion staff shares a silent, surprised look at their new lady's humble and persistent nature.
The head gardener gives a subtle nod of approval, signaling his acceptance of Leila's helpful spirit.
Ada reports to Sir Allen that Leila has charmed the staff and insisted on working outdoors. Sir Allen lets out a rare, warm chuckle as he hears about his wife's hardworking nature.
Ada explains Leila's wholesome motivation and asks Allen not to be angry with her for working.
Sir Allen heads toward Leila, assuring Ada that he is far from being upset with her.
Leila offers a formal apology for being busy in the garden instead of greeting him home.
Sir Allen tenderly holds Leila, insisting she stop laboring, but she refuses for his sake.
Leila blushes while expressing her desire for him to enjoy the beauty of the garden.
Leila clasps her hands together, promising to grow a garden of flowers he will love. Allen smiles behind his mask, promising to craft her a flower crown when they bloom.
A close-up of Leila's eye reveals the wonder and hope sparked by his sweet promise.
Leila beams as Allen departs, leaving her to oversee the arrival of her new plants. The mansion staff works tirelessly, replacing dark curtains and tending to the blooming garden beds. Leila gazes at the brightening halls, feeling satisfied with the mansion's gradual sunlit transformation. She reflects on her mission to create a peaceful sanctuary specifically for Sir Allen's comfort.
Ada shares the heartening news that Leila has been smiling more since Leila's arrival.
Ada recalls how Allen previously stayed isolated and grim, contrasting his current, more relaxed demeanor. The gardeners and maids express their genuine joy at having such a kind-hearted mistress.
Leila and Ada share a warm mutual appreciation for the bond they have quickly formed.
Ada acknowledges Allen's difficult nature while encouraging Leila to remain steadfastly by his side. Leila gazes ahead with a gentle smile, vowing to stay as long as he desires.
The grand day arrives as the couple stands before the priest for their wedding ceremony.
Dressed in elegant wedding attire, Leila steals a nervous, admiring glance at her husband-to-be. Leila questions the lack of guests, but Allen admits he has no one left to invite.
Allen explains that his social circle vanished entirely after he was afflicted by his curse.
He reveals that only the loyal staff of the mansion have remained by his side. Leila looks down sadly, realizing the deep loneliness that once permeated Allen's solitary life.
She reaches out to take his hand, reassuring him that she is finally here now.
The priest begins the formal vows, asking if they will stay together through all hardships. Sir Allen looks directly at his bride and firmly delivers his vow of commitment. Leila beams with radiant happiness as she officially accepts him as her husband.
The couple stands united as husband and wife, surrounded by an atmosphere of pure joy.
Ada and the maids clap enthusiastically, with Ada shedding tears of relief and happiness. Amidst a shower of flower petals, the newlyweds share a romantic and defining wedding kiss. Allen sweeps Leila into his arms, instructing Ada to clear the mansion for the night. The master bedroom stands prepared and silent, waiting for the couple to begin their life. Leila lies back against the sheets, her heart racing as Allen leans over her tenderly. Allen confesses that her overwhelming beauty makes it nearly impossible for him to show restraint. Leila's face flushes a deep red as she processes the intensity of his romantic admission.
Gazing into her eyes, Allen possessively declares that she belongs solely to him from now.
Leila worries he only wants her for her magic, reminding herself not to misunderstand him. She looks away wistfully, secretly wishing to be loved for herself rather than her abilities.
Allen asks if she objects to their intimacy beginning so early in the day.
Overwhelmed by the situation, Leila hides her face in her hands to mask her embarrassment.
Allen smiles warmly at her reaction, finding her flustered state to be incredibly endearing.
With their hands firmly intertwined, the narration confirms their new status as husband and wife.
A sudden flashback reveals a younger, unmasked Allen running through a chaotic, smoke-filled battlefield.
The emblem of Duca is shown, marking the neighboring southern nation as the primary enemy.
Allen reflects on the war, noting the young king's vulnerability made the nation a target.
Showing no mercy, Allen ruthlessly cuts down enemy soldiers who dare to stand in his path. His cold efficiency and bloodstained appearance earn him the terrifying and legendary nickname of Monster. Allen rushes to defend the king as a mysterious hooded figure launches a magical attack. The assassin attempts to cast a deadly curse on the king but is suddenly interrupted.
Allen stabs the cloaked man, who is stunned that his dark magic was thwarted.
Seeing his failure, the dying wizard maliciously decides to direct the curse toward Allen instead.
Allen delivers the finishing strike while the wizard vows to take his life in exchange.
Allen describes the curse's power as it burns on his skin, causing him immense pain.
The assassin falls as the curse consumes Allen's mind, and the king calls out to him.
The blonde-haired king asks if Allen is all right, but he warns him to stay away before fleeing.
Allen runs with his sword drawn, desperately trying to get away before he loses himself.
Blinded by bloodlust, Allen resolves to slaughter every enemy in sight, regardless of their identity.
He keeps killing everyone, friend or foe, as the curse takes complete control of his actions. He received a reward for protecting the king, but killing his own allies haunted him. He became known as a monster, causing everyone to abandon him and leave him alone.
Allen wakes up from the recurring nightmare, sitting up in bed with a look of distress.
He watches Leila sleep peacefully, vowing to make her happy regardless of his past loneliness.
Allen works at his desk, focused on paperwork while the sun shines through the window.
He stares out the window, his expression unreadable behind his mask as he continues his reflections.
Leila waters the flowers in the garden, smiling brightly while she tends to the blooming roses.
Allen watches Leila from a distance, a soft, rare smile appearing on his face behind his mask.
The maid tells her lord he has changed since Lady Leila arrived, which Allen questions in surprise.
The maid notes he never smiled before, leading Allen to realize he has indeed changed his demeanor.
He remembers the first time they met when he visited the Ferry family estate for treatment. He recalls how Leila stood out with her shining purple eyes despite her seemingly shabby appearance.
Allen asks for directions to the entrance, and Leila offers to guide the guest with a smile.
Allen recalls when Leila returned a flower crown to him, realizing she was being mistreated. Seeing her in poor clothes, he realized the Ferry family was mistreating their eldest daughter.
Allen notes Leila lacked healing powers compared to Emma, leading him to despise the Ferry family.
Leila was not afraid of his mask and listened to his stories during his many visits.
Allen notes Leila accepted him, unlike Emma, who could not even stand to look at him. Allen reflects that Emma's rejection was more realistic as everyone else also rejected his cursed form.
Leila says it is so much fun talking to Sir Allen, her voice ringing with genuine happiness. Allen asks if she means it, and Leila confirms her happiness with a warm, bright smile. Allen felt at ease with Leila, eventually visiting for her sake rather than for medical treatments. Leila's presence soothed his heart, making him feel less alone despite his status as a monster. Leila trips and falls while bringing flowers to Allen, dropping the bouquet as she hits the ground. Allen asks if Leila is all right while she groans in pain from her fall in the grass. The sight of blood triggers a violent reaction in Allen's eyes as his heart begins racing.
The combination of flowers and blood brings back traumatic memories of the reeking, bloody battlefield.
The curse activates violently, causing Allen's eyes to glow as the markings spread across his face. Allen screams in agony as the curse takes over, while Leila calls out to him in concern. Controlled by bloodlust, Allen pins Leila to the ground and declares he will kill the enemy. Allen realizes he is strangling Leila under the curse's control and waits for the madness to end. He expects to kill Leila soon as the dark markings of the curse continue to spread.
Allen desperately wants to save Leila and stop the curse, but his body will not listen.
Allen apologizes to Leila in his mind, fearing she is in immense pain because of him.
Leila's eyes well up with tears as she gazes back at him with sadness and understanding.
A drop of blood or light falls, causing a sudden flash that surprises the cursed Allen. Allen's curse is suppressed, leaving the pair gasping and coughing on the garden grass together. Allen offers a sincere apology, but Leila insists there is no need for him to apologize.
Leila smiles and expresses her relief that Sir Allen is all right after his terrifying ordeal.
Allen slumps down, feeling that a simple apology is not enough to make reparations for his behavior. A close-up of Leila's eyes shows her looking toward him with a gentle, loving expression. Allen realizes he loves Leila for her courage to smile despite everything that has happened. Allen admits he fell in love earlier but hid his feelings because of his terrifying curse.
Allen swears on his heart to make Leila happy as they sit together in the garden.
Sir Allen recalls that the king repeatedly ordered the Ferry family to provide him with medical treatments. He notes that Emma's blatant refusal to treat him ended his reasons for visiting the Ferry household. Seeing her suffering, he made the firm decision to save Leila from the mistreatment of her family.
He reviews documents, realizing the Count will likely refuse to let a valuable healer leave the house easily.
The Ferry family crest represents their unique and valuable lineage, which includes a history of healing abilities.
Sir Allen periodically consulted with the king to lay the necessary groundwork for his plan to protect Leila.
He reflects on the moment he was finally able to take Leila's hand in their formal marriage ceremony.
He admits it might have bothered her to marry a man labeled a monster, despite his love.
He swears on his life to make Leila happy while gazing at her with a dedicated expression.
Sir Allen reflects on how everyone left him while Leila alone stayed to improve the mansion's atmosphere.
He finds her kindness precious, noting that her cheerful presence has brought genuine happiness into his solitary life.
He resolves to continue supporting and loving her even if she does not return his romantic feelings.
The maid expresses shock, asking Lord Stanley if he just smiled out of his deep love for Leila.
Ada feels incredibly happy seeing the positive transformation Leila has brought to their previously grim master. Sir Allen blushes while sipping his tea, caught in a rare moment of visible emotion and self-consciousness.
Leila claps her hands with joy as a gardener presents her with a vibrant pot of red roses.
She proudly shows off the new curtains she selected to brighten the room and change the mansion's mood.
Sir Allen looks around the room with approval, commending her for the wonderful changes she has made.
The maids scold Leila for doing their work while the master watches the lighthearted interaction with a sigh.
The couple shares a quiet, refined dinner together as the mansion begins to feel like a warm home.
Leila falls into a deep and peaceful sleep, her pink hair spread across the pillow in the soft light.
Sir Allen reflects on the many happy and peaceful days that followed their official wedding and move-in.
Sir Allen sits alone at an outdoor table on the balcony, reflecting while surrounded by bright white flowers.
Leila approaches him with a bright smile, carrying a small decorative vase filled with fresh flowers for him.
She apologizes for interrupting his peace, explaining that she brought him outside because the weather was so lovely.
She giggles and thanks him warmly after he admits he doesn't mind her company on the sunny balcony.
Leila sits down beside him, her dress rustling as they enjoy the peaceful afternoon together in the garden.
Sir Allen's heart begins racing as traumatic visions and dark thoughts suddenly start pouring into his troubled mind. He recognizes the colors and emblem of the enemy nation Duca, signaling a violent activation of his curse.
He hallucinates Leila standing on a blood-stained battlefield, causing his mind to spiral back into traumatic war memories.
Overwhelmed by the hallucination, he feels a violent urge to kill the enemy and defend his current position.
He tries desperately to suppress the curse, fearing that dark magic will take over his actions and judgment. He realizes he must stop the curse immediately or he might inadvertently attempt to kill Leila once again.
Leila calls out to Sir Allen in alarm as she notices his physical distress and his glowing eyes.
Sir Allen groans in agony as the bloodlust takes hold, repeating his violent intent to kill the enemy. Driven by madness, he lets out a pained scream and slams his hand down with destructive magical force.
The balcony table is violently overturned in a sudden crash as Sir Allen loses control of his physical body.
He grips Leila and demands she wake up, his mind completely warped by the battlefield memories and curse. He perceives the maids as noisy enemies that must be eliminated along with everyone else in his sight. Sir Allen begins strangling Leila, viewing her as the primary enemy that must be dealt with first.
Leila's hand dangles limply as she begins to lose consciousness under the intense pressure of his physical grip.
He's stunned to see Leila smiling at him through her tears, seemingly accepting her death at his hands. Deep in his heart, he apologizes to Leila, regretting that he failed his promise to make her happy. A sudden, powerful flash of light erupts as a mysterious and ancient energy begins to manifest between them. Leila's latent healing powers are finally activated, causing the dark energy of the curse to fizzle and dissipate. The pair collapses on the balcony, gasping and coughing together after the violent magical episode has finally ended.
Sir Allen looks on in shock while his staff rushes toward the balcony, frantically calling out to Leila.
He clenches his fist in devastating guilt, realizing he has tried to kill Leila for the second time. He feels that a man as cursed and dangerous as himself has no right to love her. Leila pulls him into a compassionate hug, acknowledging the immense pain he suffers whenever the curse controls him.
Sir Allen reflects that while Leila understands him, his heart breaks over his own perceived inadequacies.
Leila laments her inability to heal him fully, but the masked lord immediately disputes her claim.
He acknowledges her potent healing subdues the curse daily, yet it remains stubbornly rooted within him.
Regretting her worry, Sir Allen removes his mask and assures Leila she has done more than enough.
A close-up reveals the lingering dark marks of the curse surrounding the man's purple eyes. Standing amidst a sea of white blossoms, the Lord requests that his wife look at him.
Leila turns away, overcome with emotion as she weeps and covers her trembling mouth.
Allen wanders a dark void, fearing his monstrous nature terrified Leila and regretting their ill-fated marriage. He looks up at Leila, who radiates joy and kindness while surrounded by bright blooming flowers.
The masked lord reflects on his wife's immense kindness while standing behind a wall of flowers.
Leila clenches her fists with renewed resolve, swearing to try even harder to break his curse.
With a determined gaze, Leila asks to remain by his side and stay in the mansion.
Allen embraces her tightly, deciding he simply wants her near regardless of her motives or pity.
The scene transitions to a peaceful night where a full moon shines over quiet garden flowers. Sir Allen stands over his sleeping wife, watching her rest peacefully in the soft, moonlit room.
He leans down and places a gentle kiss on Leila's forehead while she remains deep in sleep.
The master of the house stands alone on the balcony, gazing out at the vast starry night. He ponders his next move as the night wind blows leaves past the grand balcony railing.
Allen yearns to confess his love but worries his feelings and curse would only burden her.
He grips the railing, deciding he must wait for the curse to vanish before sharing his heart.
Observing his hand, he notes the curse feels lighter, but questions when it will fully disappear.
Under a shooting star, Allen prays for the strength and power to make Leila truly happy.
The scene shifts to the study, where Sir Allen works diligently, writing with a quill pen.
Ada knocks and apologizes for the interruption, prompting the Lord to ask what she requires.
The maid presents a private letter from the royal messenger and places it on his desk.
He dismisses the maid with a word of thanks, turning his attention to the official correspondence.
Reading the letter, Allen learns that spies from the enemy nation Duca have become active again.
A look of sudden shock and alarm crosses the man's face as he reads the details. He realizes with horror that Leila has become a target for the hostile nation of Duca.
Standing by the window, Allen crumples the document in his fist as a tense energy rises.
Leila remains blissfully unaware, smiling brightly while she prepares tea in the mansion's sunny hall.
He remembers slaying a powerful sorcerer of Duca, the act that originally triggered his terrible curse.
He reflects that while the curse was meant to be fatal, Leila's presence preserves his life.
He notes the curse was intended to make him kill allies, a miscalculation on Duca's part.
Gripping the king's warning, Allen realizes the monarch sent the letter to ensure his extreme caution.
He watches Leila from afar, filled with dread at the thought of anything happening to her.
Deciding on a course of action, he resolves to be cautious and brief Ada on the danger.
Ada approaches with urgency, and the Lord asks her to speak what is on her mind.
The maid informs him that a package from Leila's family, the Ferrys, has just been delivered.
Sir Allen questions if the Ferry family sent the gift merely to provoke or annoy them further.
A sudden realization strikes him, his eye widening as he suspects a much more sinister motive.
He trembles with rage, clutching the crumpled paper while fearing the worst has already begun to happen.
The Lord brushes past the maid with a sudden burst of speed, heading toward his wife.
He vows not to lose Leila to such low tactics, rushing through the halls with desperation.
Elsewhere, Leila reaches out to accept a mysterious white parcel from an unseen pair of hands.
Leila stands alone in the garden, looking serene as the wind tosses her long pink hair.
Heavy footsteps echo on the stone path as someone approaches the garden with a quickened pace.
Leila looks up in surprise, her peaceful moment interrupted by the sudden arrival of her husband.
Sir Allen stands before her, dressed in his formal attire and wearing his signature black mask.
Approaching his wife, Sir Allen informs her that he must leave immediately to consult the king.